night from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country.
That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
Affects us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria DiPiero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Hello there, very good morning to you. The time's 6 o'clock on this Wednesday, the 24th of April.
This is Breakfast with Eamonn Holmes and Isabel Webster. Lovely to have you with us.
The headlines this morning: the biggest boost for defence spending in a generation. The Prime Minister vows billions more by the end of the decade.
Big questions over whether Rwanda flights will act as a deterrent after 250 migrants attempted to cross the channel after 5 deaths yesterday morning.
School results in decline as the shadow of the pandemic closures leaves a lasting legacy.
And the last surviving veteran of a World War II Special Forces regiment has been brought home to join the Chelsea pensioners and share his story.
Kids should know more about the sacrifice their forefathers made. Not me, I'm no hero, but all the RAF boys have died, and people like that, they don't realise that. They don't know much about it. They don't even know who Hitler was, half of them.
And in the sport this morning, I've got to tell you, Arsenal didn't look like chokers or bottlers last night as they go back to the top by spanking Chelsea 5-0. Leicester City on the verge of heading back to the Premier League by also winning 5-0 against Southampton. And Ronnie O'Sullivan says he's not the greatest snooker player ever, but he goes for a record-breaking 8th world title from today.
Hello, it's a bit chilly out today, but at least for many of us it is going to be largely dry and there will be some decent spring sunshine too. I'll have the details in the full forecast.
The biggest defence boost in 10 years. The Prime Minister has vowed to increase defence spending to 2.5% of the national budget. That's an extra £75 billion.
Well, speaking in Poland yesterday, the Prime Minister stressed that the UK is not on the brink of war, but did claim the extra money would put the country's defence industry on a war footing.
Well, as Churchill said in 1934, to urge the preparation of defence is not to insert the imminence of war. On the contrary, if war was imminent, preparations for defence would be too late. I believe we must do more to defend our country, our interests and our values. So today I'm announcing the biggest strengthening of our national defence for a generation. We will increase defence spending to a new baseline of 2.5% of GDP by 2030.
I'm amazed how they make it look as if they are doing something as opposed to they've let defence spending fall well behind. Let's get the views on Deputy Editor at Spike Fraser-Mars. Defence budget, it's in a real mess. You talk to anyone in the armed forces, they can't maintain even accommodation for people in the armed forces. We're in the red as regards our bills for various munitions and things at the moment. I mean, you know, This isn't, he's not doing anything. He's doing what he has to do and should have done a long time ago.
I think a lot of people will be saying 2.5% by 2030. Well, you're not going to be Prime Minister, mate, by 2030.
Correct. That's a Labour problem, then.
I think Labour will probably commit to it. They certainly want to go to this 2.5% figure, is what they've said previously, that they want to scrutinise the numbers if they see if they can get there by 2030.
Sorry to interrupt, but Ben Wallace was hilarious, I thought, yesterday in his response to that. He said, oh, really? We need another defence review, do we? He said, why not we create a union for defence? That'll scare our enemies.
I mean, and everyone sort of agrees that defence is becoming much more of a national priority. The world is becoming more unstable. I don't want to exaggerate that. I'm not saying we're on the brink of World War III or anything like that. But certainly you can see tensions, war breaking out in the Middle East. We still have the war in Ukraine waging on, tensions increasing in the Far East too, between China and various other East Asian countries. So, we are living in a more dangerous world, and defence should be at the forefront of people's minds.
But what has suddenly triggered this change? Because it was just weeks ago in the budget when Jeremy Hunt and the Chancellor were insisting that they'd get to 2.5% of GDP when the economic conditions allowed. Well, nothing's changed economically in that time.
No, that's right. I mean, I think it's because it's something that has, dogged Rishi Sunak, that he's been seen as weak on defence. His other rivals for the Tory leadership all pledged to reach this 2.5% target around this kind of time. He's saying that he can reach it without affecting frontline services, without putting up taxes. That remains to be seen. He says he will do it by reducing the civil service to pre-Brexit levels. Now, governments always promise they can make efficiency savings without affecting your public services, but often
70,000 civil service jobs is a huge number, and if there were that many to cut, surely they would have done that before.
They could have done that now, you'd think,
And Ben Wallace seems to have hinted in an interview elsewhere that these cuts could actually come from a manifesto pledge where they were going to cut taxes. They say that the money could come from not making
the tax cuts going into the next election. I mean, this thing. I mean, in any ways, as I said earlier, this is not going to be Rishi Sunak's decision realistically. How to manage this. I think one of the problems, as you alluded to, Eamonn, is that the military is degraded. We have, I think, 76,000 soldiers. That's a third less than just 2 decades ago. The world was a lot safer place 2 decades ago, you could say. The Navy is so short-staffed, they recently had to mothball 2 ships. There's a broader recruitment crisis in the armed forces. Whether a 0.2 percentage point increase in the budget over the next 6 years is going to make up for those issues, I think, is it seems unlikely to me.
This comes at the same time as all this extra money is being released by the USA for Ukraine, for Taiwan, whatever. And I know you said we're not on the brink of World War III. You could have fooled me.
Well, I think one of the reasons why it feels there's a sort of sense of urgency in Britain and also in Europe, actually, you know, Rishi Sunak is doing European tour. He's talking to Polish Prime Minister and to the German Chancellor, is because of the fear of Trump presidency and possibly more isolationist US. Now, we've had the Ukraine package passed in the Senate, 60 billion going towards Ukraine and to other conflicts. But that took so much wrangling, and that was even under a Democratic president who is fully supportive of of Ukraine's fight. I think Trump is actually not as isolationist as many commentators make out, but he is certainly unpredictable, and he has, you know, quite famously said that, you know, NATO countries that don't pay their way, Vladimir Putin, come and have a go. Now, he obviously doesn't really mean that, but I think, you know, the West, the non-US, you know, UK, Europe, the other NATO countries are starting to worry that, you know, the US is not necessarily going to be a reliable partner, and so we have to, you know, get our own house in order.
Well, thank you very much, Fraser Myers, Deputy Editor at Spiked, for us this morning. Appreciate it.
You heard what Fraser had to say there, and what do we know? We know absolutely nothing. If you've served or are serving in the armed forces in some form or other, and you say, look, they need to spend money here, and that money may be your accommodation. Very, very important. I mean, there's no point to having people serving if they're not being housed, if they're not being looked after properly, if they're not being paid the right rate, as well as munitions and all sorts of technology and a change in the way that we police the world as well. Let us know what you think on that. Please do get in touch this morning. This is how you do it. It's gbnews.com/your say. Have your say, talk to each other on that forum as well, and we will reflect that throughout the programme this morning. So if you're serving, or you have served, or you have an idea
someone in your family
where the money should be spent, let us know this morning, and we will reflect that.
Now, researchers are warning that the damaging legacy of the pandemic will mean poorer GCSE results well into the 2030s.
Academics at the Universities of Exeter, Strathclyde and the London School of Economics predict that fewer than 2 in 5 pupils in England will achieve a grade 5 or above in English and Math GCSEs. That's roughly equivalent to a grade C.
Well, we're joined by maths teacher Bobby Seagull. Do you recognise, good morning to you, this prediction? Is this a fear that you share?
Yeah, to be honest, I think it's a really sort of sad indictment of the last few years in terms of COVID. Obviously, the strike's been going on. But I think the numbers are staggering. So currently, Isabel and Eamonn, 45% of students get a grade 4, a good pass, as it were, in maths and English. And what this report by the Nuffield Foundation predicts is by 2030, so students that sort of had studied during the pandemic, that will drop by 5%. And again, sometimes in the media, you know, we can tell a 5% drop, that's not a very large number, but that's like 30,000+ students, fewer students that will get good maths and GCSE English. And what this means is that, one, their job opportunities are much more difficult, but additional to their academic suffering, these students have sort of been impacted by social and emotional skills that they're not developed. Because we know that young people, they develop best with each other. We're humans, we're social beings. But because of lockdown, they had a couple of years where they were at home, on their phones, doing some work online. But the reality is, classrooms are the best environments for young people socially and academically. And this impact is going to be seen for, this report thinks, for decades to come. So actually, it's something where they have made some suggestions, solutions, but they said that we've got to start trying to solve this immediately rather than waiting for the fallout in a few years.
Yeah, but Bobby, what I don't get is that was then, the pandemic. This is now. Why can't a new term, new classes, everything back to normal, not put that right? Why have we got to wait 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years before figures readjust?
Yeah, I think it's because if you look at where young people learn, they sort of learn foundation, almost like a pyramid style. So young people, if they missed out real sort of foundation learning when they're 5 or 6 or 7, you might think, oh, they'll catch up with it. But that impact has a compounding impact. So by the time they get to 16, they'll have missed out on so much additional learning. And again, their foundations are lost. And again, I think we won't see the impact till 2013, but there has to be solutions now. And again, this report, I had a read of it. They talked about equalizing policies, but understandably, we are in a tough economic budget condition. So they've got some low-cost solutions. One is, they said, think about tutoring by undergraduates. Could undergraduates, again, volunteering or for reasonable cost, go and support schools with tutoring? And then secondly, this suggests a bit more radical about rebalancing the school calendar year. So, there's, let's say, 12, 13 weeks of school holiday per year. But a lot of research has shown that the 6-week summer holiday actually impacts the most disadvantaged students, because I've seen in my 10 years as a secondary.
When you compare it with private schools, they actually have longer holidays than the state sector, and yet their results are higher. I don't think it's got to do with periods of time off. And I think actually a lot of teachers are attracted to the profession because they get these breaks from work, essentially. I think if you were to shorten those holidays, for example, you might have an even bigger recruitment issue. Surely, though, there must be more that the schools can do around early morning classes for those that are struggling, being able to identify, as you say, maybe getting in volunteers to tutor. And lots of parents must be have skills as well that they could share with the kids.
Yeah, I think, Isabel, you're right. It's a combination of both. But I will say on the school holiday, it's not about cutting the 6 weeks to 2 weeks holiday. It's maybe taking a week off there and moving it towards the October half term and making that 2 weeks instead of 1 week. Because again, I think with the independent sector, generally children that are lucky enough to be in the sector, over the holidays, they might go to museums or go on trips abroad, or they might, the parents might sit and read to them. Whereas generally, students from the state sector, especially the ones from the most disadvantaged backgrounds, actually in the holidays, a lot of them don't do anything. They sit at home on their phones for 6 weeks. So again, it's about what one of their suggestions in this report is reducing it by maybe a week or so. But Isabel, you're right in terms of other things, early morning breakfast clubs, additional support, getting parents in. So I think it's about schools at the education sector being creative, because, again, with politics, it's all about priorities. And education is important, but money is very tight for this country. So as a nation, we're going to have to be very creative about the solutions we come for education. Because, again, even Mr. Sunak, he said that education, he thinks, is the silver bullet that we have to improving this country's lot generally.
But, Bobby, not every teacher is like you, and I hope there are so many teachers like you. You feel your energy, you're getting ready for class today, you have a spring in your step. I hope that can be replicated. I think I would love to be a teacher. I'd love to go and teach history or something. And
I'd hate to be in your class.
No, I think I would
be regarded as the fun teacher, believe me. I think the idea of being contagious almost with your pupils, very difficult with mathematics. I can't relate to you and your...
But he might have got us through maths, mightn't he, Bob?
No. I can't relate to the subject or the usefulness of the subject or anything, but, we'll agree to disagree on that. But I think the responsibility on the teachers' shoulders is incredible. And if they do the job right and they're enthusiastic about it, there's no finer job in the land, I would have thought.
Oh, I agree. So again, in my 20s, I spent my time working in the city. I was a trader at Lehman Brothers, not a good choice of bank, and at Nomura, and I was a chartered accountant at PwC. But my time in teaching, I would say, whilst it's had much more ups and downs, is the most rewarding thing you can do, because you have that impact on a young person that can influence them for life. And occasionally, in Stratford bus station, I get towering 6'3" young man who say, "Hello, Mr. Seagull." I'm like, "Who is this? Am I safe?" And you say, "Oh, sir, you taught me 10 years ago." In fact, at Stratford Cinema over the weekend, some young man came to me and said, "Oh, are you Bobby Seagull?" I thought, "Oh God, is he one of those fans from TV?" He said, "Oh, my name is Yaya, and you taught me 10 years ago. I'm about to do geology at university. You're a really great teacher." So again, teachers can have that lifelong impact on young people.
Yeah, that makes me feel emotional. We can all remember our teachers that changed our lives, and you do. Every day you'll be changing children's lives. It is incredible. You were talking about the kids that are spending their summer holidays scrolling on their phones, not doing anything, wasting all of their potential. Another teacher's been in the headlines this week, I think a head teacher in North London, saying he'd like to see the school day extended from 7 a.m. till 7 p.m. because he fears lots of kids are going home at 3 o'clock and just doom scrolling on their phone and wasting their lives, and they'd be much better staying at school with their peers, doing organised sport, doing extra classes. Has he got a point?
Again, I would say there is a point, but again, I can imagine it wouldn't be very popular with teachers. But again, the school day is 6 hours, and again, I think there's a limited amount of academic knowledge that students can take on in school, because if you're bombarded for another 2-3 hours, you're not going to take it in. But there is definitely an argument for having additional different types of activities, whether it's after school cricket or whether it's after school debate club. And these can be run by external organizations that come in and run these things. Because again, school is not just about the academic qualifications, which I still think are the most important thing, but you need young people to develop their social skills, emotional skills, money skills. And these are things which, within the confines of a school curriculum, Isabel and Eamonn, can be quite tricky, because ultimately schools are responsible for getting kids through their GCSEs, and other things that are the sort of social side do get cut. But yeah, I think there is an argument, but I think, yeah, if you told teachers it's going to be 7 a.m. to 7 p.m, I think the recruitment and retention crisis might get a bit worse.
Yeah, well said. You're absolutely right. And I suppose I'm lucky, we're lucky in general that we can look back on our school years and say, happiest days of our life. Not everybody can do that, and I'm not really sure why mine were the happiest days of my life. But gosh, when I left school, I really missed it. So, you know, well done you, my friend. You have a good day at class. Always a pleasure to talk to you and hear your various theories on things. And we want people... You've heard what Bobby's had to say. Get in touch with us this morning. What would make school better? What would get these exam results up again generally? What needs to happen? Let us know this morning. Have your say. Bobby Seagull, thank you very much indeed.
You know, I always wondered how Bobby Seagull, a maths teacher, could afford such snappy suits. Now I know. He was a trader at Lehman Brothers. He's always so sharp, isn't he?
No, my whole point to him, I was going to ask him about Lehman Brothers, is he had a high salary job, which he gave up for an average salary job. And that in itself is a big statement to make, to do that. Here's how you get in touch this morning to have your say on all of this at www.gbnews.com/have your say. So we want to hear what you think about defence, where this new budget should be spent in defence spending, and how you get standards in classes up, exam results up higher over the next 5 or 6 years.
Time now, with the time at 6:18, to take a look at the other stories coming into the newsroom this morning. The former leader of the Democratic Unionist Party, Sir Geoffrey Donaldson, is due to appear in Newry Magistrates Court this morning. Donaldson resigned as DUP leader and was suspended from the party after being charged with several historical sexual offences.
Emma Webber, the mother of Nottingham attack victim Barnaby Webber, has written an emotive open letter to the members of a police WhatsApp group after her son's body was described as properly butchered. She has asked officers to have more compassion for victims and their families. Barnaby Webber, Grace O'Malley, Kumar and Ian Coates were stabbed to death by Baldo. Sorry, I can't pronounce his surname, but anyway, he's a scumbag, on June 13th last year.
Labour are set to announce funding for 13,000 extra neighbourhood police officers by setting up a national police savings body. It'll be used to buy vital kit, including police cars, IT equipment, forensic services and more. Labour say the move will help tackle huge disparities between police forces across the country.
Wales could see an overturn of this 20-mile-per-hour default speed limits on residential roads. We heard all of this yesterday. A record-breaking petition opposing the speed restrictions received nearly 500,000 signatures calling for the law to be scrapped.
Now, the last surviving member of a Special Forces regiment during World War II has fulfilled his dream to dine at the Ritz Hotel in London, celebrating his 102nd birthday.
102. 102, and bright as a button, it has to be said. Cameron Walker went to meet him.
War is not glamorous. We thought it was, actually, when you're young.
John Morris is the last surviving member of his SAS regiment from the Second World War. Before joining the Special Forces, his service began in Kent, shooting down German bombers targeting London.
The only thing I shot down actually was a chimney, kitchen chimney, accidentally by mistake. Nobody had any breakfast that morning. I wasn't very popular.
John was one of the last people to receive a 100th birthday card from Queen Elizabeth II.
All birthday cards from the children from Christchurch School.
Celebrating his 102nd birthday this week, Local schoolchildren made him cards, thanking him for his bravery.
I think kids should know more about the sacrifice their forefathers made. Not me, I'm no hero, but all the RAF boys had died, and people like that, they don't realise that. They don't know much about it. They don't even know who Hitler was, half of them.
John, who's now a Chelsea pensioner, kindly agreed to share his wartime memories. In 1943, he was sent to North Africa with the Royal Artillery and passed Special Forces selection, taking part in the Allied invasion of Italy.
75,000 British and colonial troops were killed in Italy. The Germans fought back very well.
Ultimately, the Allies were successful, but a much more powerful, natural threat was not far away. Mount Vesuvius, famous for destroying the Roman town of Pompeii in AD 79, erupted.
I woke up in the morning, heard this rumble, looked outside, and this wall of lava coming down. So never go on a volcanic island where I am, because it's very dangerous.
That year, Allied forces landed on the beaches of Normandy. Known as D-Day, the operation led to the liberation of Western Europe and was one of the most famous and widely praised successes of the war. Far away in Italy, John and his comrades were branded with a less than flattering nickname, turned into a popular wartime song.
We've already done 3 D-Days. We did the North African landing, we did the Battle of Britain, and we did the Italian landing, we did the Yugoslavia, Albania, and they called us D-Day Dodgers.
But we're the D-Day Dodgers out in Italy.
John celebrated his 102nd in style. First a party with the Chelsea pensioners, followed by a champagne lunch, organised by friend and Irish Guards ambassador Frederike Crum.
The Ritz always had a wonderful relationship with the Chelsea pensioners. We celebrate in style, and he's never been to the Ritz, so that will be worthy of the 102nd birthday. Right, John?
That's right.
Cameron Walker, GB News.
Oh, wow, wow, wow. 102.
Great story. Yeah. Bright as a button.
Absolutely.
As well. Amazing story, and there'll be so few of those stories left to tell ever. That's maybe the last one. The weather situation today, it's cold today. It's very cold out there this morning. Let's see what Alex Burkle has to say.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Morning, here's your GB News weather from the Met Office. It's a bit chilly out there at the moment, but for many of us it's going to be a dry day with some decent sunny spells. Watch out for a touch of frost in some rural spots, and there are already a few showers in parts of the southwest and towards North Sea coastal parts, and here some of them will continue as we go through the afternoon as well. Otherwise, a decent amount of sunshine, especially across western parts of England and Wales and across much of Scotland and Northern Ireland too. Despite the sunny skies though, it is going to feel a little bit chilly. Temperatures below average for the time of year generally, most places into double figures, but just about for some, particularly towards the northeast. As we go through tonight, and most of the showers will die out, and so it is going to be dry for many of us. There will be a bit more cloud perhaps towards eastern parts and a little bit more blustery here, but elsewhere calmer and clear skies means temperatures will take a bit of a drop. A bit more frost around first thing tomorrow morning, then this morning a chilly start for many of us. Again, as we go through tomorrow, a few showers to watch out for across parts of central England into Wales. There may be a few dotted here. Also towards the northeast, across eastern parts of Scotland, some fairly frequent showers and perhaps a little bit breezier here. But otherwise, again, generally fine and dry for many of us. Perhaps just a bit more cloud around compared to today. Nonetheless, many of us will see some sunny spells. Temperatures still a little bit on the low side. Most places just about getting into double figures.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Great British giveaway. Time to give you the hope of winning this. It is the final week, yeah. It's your next holiday, and this is what it could be.
Yeah, it's a Greek cruise for two, £10,000 in cash and luxury travel gifts, a total prize worth of over £20,000. And this is how it could be yours.
It's the final week to see how you could win our biggest prize yet. There's an incredible £10,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. Plus, courtesy of Variety Cruises, a bespoke 7-night small boat cruise for two worth £10,000. With flights, meals, excursions and drinks included, your next holiday could be on us. Choose any one of their 2025 Greek adventures and find your home at sea. We'll also send you packing with these luxury travel gifts. Hurry, as lines close on Friday. For another chance to win a prize worth over £20,000, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB04 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Okay, Manchester United manager Erik Ten Hag is saying that it's a disgrace how people have criticised his team after their win against lower league side Coventry City on Sunday in the FA Cup. Is it a disgrace he was criticised, or is he a disgrace? Let us know what you think. Paul Coit with that after this.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Arsenal top of the league, top of the Premier League. Paul Coit to tell me, was that an amazing 5-0 win for them or a disgrace by Chelsea at that level?
I think it was a bit of both, to be honest with you. Chelsea were not good. Just capitulated after the first goal went in, and that's what...
It's embarrassing, actually, at that level, I think, to lose 5-0.
It really is. It's the worst loss I think they've ever had against Arsenal. It's the worst loss in a London derby that they've had since, I think, 1986. In fact, I know that's a fact. So it's no good. Whereas Arsenal, you know, people are throwing this thing at Arsenal, oh, they're bottlers, and when you get to the end of the season, they're going to throw it away and they're going to blow it. I'm looking at them and I'm thinking they look like the best team.
3 points, 3 clear now, aren't they?
They're 3 clear, and they've got the best goal difference because it's so tight anyway. That goal difference could make a huge difference when it comes to Manchester City, when it comes to Liverpool. We're playing Everton tonight. So, at the moment, difficult as it is for me to say, Eamonn, I think Arsenal look like the best side, and I think they would probably be the favourites in my book at the moment. I know Manchester City. I know everybody's like, oh, yeah, but City. But I think there's a wobble in them, and I think there is in Liverpool as well, where at the moment I think Arsenal look relentless, and it's a huge game because it's the North London derby on Sunday, so they're going to play Spurs at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. So who knows? Spurs could be the team that actually, you know, take it away from them,
and
but
they'll be motivated by that as well. You know,
of course,
having the possibility
but
of doing
both
that.
will be. So 5-0 to Arsenal, very good win for them.
Leicester flying in the Championship, and a 5-0 win for them against Southampton last night.
Everybody scoring 5. Yeah. Whereas Leicester, they've had that little bit of a wobble. Southampton are also up there as well. They're going for looking for promotion. So it looks like probably Southampton will be in the playoffs. Leicester, so they need to win one of their last 2 matches. They're playing Preston and Blackburn. If they win one of those, they will be straight back up to the Premier League. Although if Leeds lose at Queen's Park Rangers on Friday, that also means that Leicester will be promoted without having to kick a ball.
I honestly think today's headlines may lead to a demotion. Sacking for Erik ten Hag. The very fact that he said that criticism after his FA Cup win on Sunday was a disgrace by critics, he's got it so wrong. And he criticises the journalists, and he says that the fans are led by opinions. The fans have opinions of their own.
100%.
And I would say to Erik ten Hag, I don't think anybody, if you stay, fine. If you leave, nobody will be crying. Nobody will be saying, oh, what a shame, what a pity. Because there is nothing that he seems to do tactically that United fans can relate to and say, wow, look at the way we play. This is United. This is the way we do things.
It is. You can't start pointing the finger. If you start pointing the finger at the press, you've got to keep the press on side. It's always a bad thing to start turning against the press. And then to say that the public are swayed by the press, then that's insulting to your own fans. We do have what Erik ten Hag said. So Erik ten Hag then at the press conference yesterday, and he was asked, were you embarrassed by what happened? The fact that Manchester United were 3-0 up, then it went to 3-3 and Coventry scored 3 goals. This is what Erik ten Hag had to say yesterday.
No. Absolutely not. And you made it up, and no one was made the question, is it embarrassing? No, the reactions from you was embarrassed.
Why do you say that?
Well, it is. The comments in football, top football is about results. We made it to the final, and that is a huge achievement. Twice in 2 years is magnificent. For me as a manager, 4 cup finals in 4 years. And so the comments are a disgrace.
I don't think the comments were a disgrace at all.
Listen, I go back to 1983. The manager of Aberdeen then, they just won the Scottish Cup, right?
Yeah.
And he says he was furious. He came out spitting, literally spitting, the manager of Aberdeen. And he said, we're the luckiest team in the world. That was a disgrace of a performance. We could take no glory from that. They were a disgrace. And his team won the cup. And that manager was Alex Ferguson, right? And that's the reaction Ten Hag should be having to that win. That win on penalties as well. And also, not when they were 3-0 up, they were 3-0 up with 17 minutes left.
Let's not forget that.
So
and it was a capitulation. And it was, and they nearly lost it. And if it wasn't VAR. But the other thing you mentioned is that how Alex Ferguson reacted to his players when he was the Aberdeen manager. But unfortunately, whether it be right or wrong, and I think probably wrong, you can't dig players out like that these days because, unfortunately, they then go, well, you can't talk to me that way. I'm not very happy about it. And very rarely do you get a decent reaction. Although Pochettino did it yesterday, and he was saying that, you know, we were soft, we capitulated. He was very, very angry. But unfortunately, I think it's just the way of the world that you've got to have the kid clubs and you've got to deal with people in a different way.
Well,
but Erik ten Hag, he chose the wrong enemies there being...
Go to your YouTube and look up Alex Ferguson, Scottish FA Cup, Aberdeen, 1983. The reaction is absolutely brilliant. Ronnie O'Sullivan, we talked about him. He says he doesn't think he's the greatest player of all time, but he does say that his name's up there with Steve Davis.
It should be,
as
though,
well,
shouldn't it?
And Stephen Hendry.
Well, it should be. I mean, he's going for his 8th world title, which starts today, which is him going for it. We're at the first round. I mean, in my opinion, he is the greatest of all time. I mean, it's always...
Yeah, but he sets the standard so high, and he believes that he took slightly longer than Davis or Stephen Hendry to achieve what he has achieved. But he also does it with such style. I think also... I mean, Steve Davis was known as boring Steve Davis. Yeah. I mean, he ground out the results. But, I mean, this guy has flair.
He has flair, and this is what we like, and this is what snooker needs. But we're talking 20 years, a huge career, which still goes on. He's still the #1 in the world. He's going for the triple already, because he's already won the Masters, he's won the British Championship. So I don't think there's much doubt that he is the greatest. Pot Black, you did Pot Black, didn't you?
I was the last ever presenter of Pot Black.
Yes.
I took it off air.
Was it down to you? Eamonn still blames the players. They didn't have the flair they used to. But that was what made snooker popular, was Pot Black, wasn't it? Because it was one frame. And I've got one question for you, because I've always wanted to know this. It was always one frame.
Yeah.
How did they have a half-hour frame? Did they ever play a few? Because some frames would go very quickly. You would never fill the half hour, because it used to be a half-hour TV show, one frame of snooker, and it always used to fit perfectly. So were they always just they always ran for half an hour, and I never quite understood why.
I have absolutely no idea. I've absolutely no idea.
Did they slow it down sometimes?
I'm not sure. It was just one game, but
it was always one frame.
Well, maybe it was interviews based around it and during it and whatever.
And who did you like? Which players?
I mean, listen, I had the privilege to watch, the Alex Higginses of this world. Totally, what I'm trying to say, not the full shilling, it has to be said, but I mean, flair to watch.
Yeah.
Absolutely incredible.
See, the thing is, you've got the flair and the full shilling, and that's the difference.
But I can't remember if it was more than one frame or what happened there.
It was a long time ago.
OK, my friend. God bless. Thank you. See you again, 7:20. We'll be talking about who is favoured to be the new Liverpool manager. The papers right after this.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In Murray, the A95 is closed in both directions off the A941 at Craigalachy after an accident yesterday afternoon. The A1M in North Yorkshire is closed in both directions between junctions 48 and 47, between Borough Bridge and Allerton Park after an accident overnight. Trains have been stopped between Wakefield Westgate and Wakefield Kirkgate because of a signalling problem. On the M60 in Greater Manchester, 2 out of 3 lanes are closed anti-clockwise for emergency repairs between junctions 11 and 10 from Barton to the Trafford Centre. There are queues from junction 12 at the Eccles interchange. Train services are suspended between Shepherd's Bush and Watford Junction because of overhead line problems, and train services are suspended between Barnham and Horsham, where overnight engineering works have overrun. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking... This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them. They catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're going through the papers this morning in the company of the former Liberal Democrat Minister Norman Baker and the medical writer Renee Hunderkamp. Very warm welcome to both of you. Thank you for joining us. Norman, let's start with what is being described as the biggest increase in defence spending for a generation. 2.5% of GDP, something Boris Johnson had previously promised. Why has Rishi Sunak suddenly decided to do this, do you think?
Well, he's doing it because, first of all, the Conservative backbenchers are demanding that it should be done, and he's trying to deal with that particular attack on his right flank. And secondly, he wants to put Labour in a position where they're having to try to match it. So it's a political move. The other thing worth saying is that no government can tie the hands of a future government. This is spending which is going to take place until 2030. Therefore, there's no guarantee that the next government, whoever they are, Labour or Conservative or hung Parliament, will deliver this particular allocation to defence. Having said that, I think it's right that we should increase defence spending, but we've got to just increase it sensibly. We've got to look at what needs to be done. For example, the idea of dealing with drones, which are more of a threat these days than they would have been in the past, or cybercrime, which is potentially very serious indeed. And I wonder whether we should be spending more on our troops rather than 110 billion over the next 10 years on nuclear submarines.
OK, so you don't think that's an important part of it? I mean, we know that we've had Russian nuclear submarines in Kursk.
Yes, but we're part of NATO. An attack on one country is an attack on any country in NATO, and the Americans got nuclear defence. I don't think we have to have it. Other countries in NATO don't have it.
Well, I suppose people have been questioning the security of NATO with some of the noises coming out of Donald Trump. It doesn't hurt to be cautious in an uncertain world.
Well, it doesn't hurt, but I actually think Donald Trump will be good for NATO, because I think what will happen is he will force all of the other countries to actually step up.
Well, it's already happening, isn't it, after what he said?
I do think, however, that this, warfare has changed and we should go cyber, etc., has actually led us down a blind alley where we now have no troops, not enough sailors to man the actual warships we've got. And we need to actually increase our defence spending quicker than 2030 and start putting men back into boots to arm ourselves. We're pathetic. We do not have an army anymore.
And how are we going to fund all of this? That's the big question.
We need to get rid of all of the insane waste that there is in the government, the civil service, the ridiculous things that we shouldn't be doing. Someone needs to have an honest conversation with the British public where we say, OK, this is what we would like to do. What would you like us to do? And we need to get rid of some of the peripheral stuff that would be nice if we did have that magic money tree. But we don't.
But is there fat to be cut, in your view?
Not really. I mean, I think we've seen in the government the civil service has been cut quite badly already. Local councils are on the floor. They've got no money at all. The health service is falling to bits. Look, I mean, we haven't got a lot of money in public services to cut. What we could do, and I come back to the point, I want more troops on the ground. I want them soldiers and sailors and properly equipped. We don't need to spend £110 billion on nuclear submarines. That, if you just cancelled that, that would provide you everything you want.
That's the only defence that's worth having, for goodness sake. As long as you have the nuclear deterrent, and it can be anywhere in the world.
What are you deterring?
What? You're deterring Russia for a start. You're deterring China.
Germany, Spain. But they're not
the ones to worry about.
Why?
I mean,
why
I would have thought you could scrap absolutely everything we have in terms of defence as long as you keep a nuclear submarine. Because no one's going to mess with you.
Well, I mean...
That's why we don't mess with Russia. Russia's not a force. America could walk all over Russia, but they've got nuclear deterrence.
No, we come back to the point. We are a NATO member, and there is nuclear defence within NATO. Not every single NATO country has to have it, and very few do. No one's suggesting that Russia's going to invade Germany.
I think people are suggesting...
I would keep the submarines. I would, but you see getting rid of the submarines, leaving us very vulnerable. But then everything else is OK then after that.
Now, what's vulnerable is the fact that the Russians can attack our underwater cables, can poison our water, can interfere with our infrastructure. That's what's vulnerable at the moment.
It's enough to drive you to drink. And on that subject, Doctor, the good doctor here, there's a Belgian man who we want to talk about here, whose body actually brews alcohol, creates alcohol inside him. This is a real condition.
It is, but it's very rare, and it's not actually a real condition that you can't treat. So this is because his gut microbiome has been upset in such a way that the fungi and bacteria in his gut are making alcohol from carbohydrates. You treat it by laying off antibiotics, changing your diet, and it brings me back every time to how important our gut is in our overall health.
So if he eats a sandwich...
He's like a mini brewery.
He is.
He's a chance of getting drunk.
It's cheap. I mean, it's a cheap date.
So he is walking around drunk just purely because he's processing food into booze.
Because he's not doing what it should do.
Oh, my goodness, I thought I'd heard it all. OK, well, we're going to pause and hopefully get some more papers a little bit later on, perhaps after 7:30, maybe in a moment or two. Thank you for now to both of you. Well, let's start talking to the Defence Secretary, Grant Shapps, who joins us this morning. Very good morning to you. Straight back, I believe, from Poland yesterday. Thank you for joining us. Look, lots of people very pleased to see this move being made by the Prime Minister and yourself yesterday, this 2.5% increase in defence spending by 2030. What's changed since the spring budget just a few weeks ago when the Prime Minister said this would only happen when the economic conditions allowed?
Morning. Well, look, first of all, very good news, as you say, spending 2.5% of our entire GDP on defence. And I think the thing which we've always said is we'll do this when conditions allow, and the conditions being inflation coming down, so the money's not being spent and effectively frittered away in inflation. And we've had significant success now bringing inflation down from over 11% down to just above 3%. And predicted to fall to its target a year early, or earlier than expected. So I think the conditions are right now, but not only that, you know, the situation in the world, you've seen what's been happening in Ukraine, with Putin continuing to prosecute his illegal war. You've seen what's happening in the Middle East with Iran firing on Israel with hundreds of projectiles. So, you know, the world, as we've been saying, as I was saying back in my speech in January, is looking more dangerous. I think it's very important for Britain to play its leadership part. The Prime Minister has stepped up and has done that in a very significant way. And I think this is very, very good news for the United Kingdom, our security, and also for our leadership in the rest of the world.
So where Defence Secretary would you see yourself spending that money?
Well, look, there's a whole bunch of different things that we are doing or that we need to do. So it's a very simple example. We've expended a lot of munitions, so this could be missiles and other things, with Ukraine. And in fact, just yesterday, we gave Ukraine the biggest single package of new gifted items since the war began. All of that needs replacing. But I think also the war in Ukraine showed you really need more of this stuff in the first place. In other words, stockpiles need to be higher. And so one of the things we've said with the additional money is that we'll have an extra £10 billion, £1 billion per year for 10 years, over and above what we'd normally do with munitions. So that's a very good example. But there are very many others, including the way that we treat our people, how good the accommodation is, new technology like the Dragonfire laser weapon, which for £10 a shot could take down incoming drones. So, I mean, there are a lot of different things that this money will be used on. But most of all, I hope it leverages other countries to come forward and spend their money properly. So Britain set a 2% target 10 years ago for NATO. We're now saying the new target should be that higher 2.5%, because it's really important that we show dictators everywhere, people like Putin, that we will not be walked over. And that's what this package does.
How are we going to pay for it, though? If there really was all this fat to cut in the civil service, surely you'd have done it already. The suggestion of 70,000 jobs is a huge number.
Well, it sounds huge until you learn that actually this just takes us back to where we were pre-COVID in the civil service. So
You'd have done it already.
I think. Oh, well, as I say, we'd announced actually that we were planning to do it. This will take it a little bit faster. But nonetheless, I don't think there's anything unreasonable. I'll give you an example because I'm going to take the cuts in my own department of the Ministry of Defence. We currently, in addition to 188,000 plus people who fight in the armed forces and a huge number of people behind that who support, we have about 60,000 people in MOD. Well, we're saying that by 2028, we think we can manage by 50,000, with 50,000 people. And given new technologies, I don't think that is really particularly extreme.
So you're spending more money on defence, but you're actually cutting defence.
We'll be cutting the bureaucracy behind defence. So we don't think that we need to have, particularly in this world of the technology, AI and the rest of it, we don't think we need to have a bloated central department in order to run defence. We want people on the front line, not officers.
Your predecessor, Ben Wallace, seems to have been implying that a tax cut that was due in the manifesto may now be sacrificed to fund this. Can you confirm that?
No, that won't happen. What we're saying is that this is fully funded. We have worked through all of the numbers. You've mentioned some of how this will be paid for, and it is £75 billion more on defence by the end of the decade. So it is a lot of money, but it is fully funded. It won't require new borrowing or reversing anything that we've announced. I think it is important to say we have come to the conclusion that the defence of the realm is absolutely essential, and it is a priority for this government. And we're happy. I'm happy to confirm that is deliberate. We are trying to be clear to our adversaries that we will always fund defence. And as the second biggest funder in NATO, as the largest defence country in Europe, we want others to follow our lead and get more money into defence, because without defending your nation, everything else is somewhat by the by. And so it's incredibly important to do this.
Labour may inherit the bill that comes with that. Do you think they'll agree with the spending?
Well, I'm very concerned about their attitude towards all of this. And for a start, Keir Starmer leads a party with various members of his frontbench team who voted against, for example, Trident, that's our nuclear deterrent, which is at the cornerstone of our entire military, our entire stance. And, you know, his shadow foreign secretary, his shadow deputy prime minister, all voted against this stuff. Now they're sort of saying, well, we're not sure, we don't think, you know, I just don't think you can trust Labour when it comes to this nation's defence. Let's face it, Keir Starmer twice supported a man, Jeremy Corbyn, who wanted to take us out of NATO, abandon Trident, our nuclear defence, and turn the army into a defence corps. Peace Corps, I think it was.
Yeah, well, Labour have said about this that since 2010, the Conservatives have wasted more than £15 billion on mismanaging defence procurement, shrunk the army to its smallest size since Napoleon, missed their recruitment targets every year, and allowed morale to fall to record lows.
Sorry to be clear on one of those stats, for example. They keep quoting this, 15 billion or whatever they're claiming. This is what happens when you get to the end of the life of the weapon, when it has to be decommissioned, and then they count that in that figure. In fact, actually, we've been, including yesterday, doing much more useful things with those weapons. They would usually just be decommissioned. Anyone would have to do that. Instead, we've been sending them to Ukraine, which I think I'm very proud of. Very relieved to see that package get through the US Congress overnight, $61 billion for Ukraine. And it reminds me of that old Churchill maxim that America usually does the right thing once it runs out of all the alternatives. I'm very, very pleased about that, and we're delighted that Ukraine, through our package yesterday, £500 million plus gifting, America's package, is going to get the stuff that it needs to really take on Putin.
Defence Secretary, thanks for your time this morning. I know it's been a busy 24 hours or so for you. Appreciate it. We'll speak again soon. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
So some reaction from our panel to all of this. Norman?
Well, I mean, I think the key thing, just objectively, is what's going to happen after the next election, because all the polls suggest there'll be a Labour government or a hung parliament, and the Conservatives will not win. I mean, I'm just talking neutrally as to what's being proposed. So therefore, anything this government says about what will happen until 2030 is theoretical. And what really matters is what the Labour Party and maybe the Lib Dems and SNP will do about this after.
And their holding position was the same as what Jeremy Hunt and the Chancellor was saying just a couple of weeks ago at the spring budget, which is we will do 2.5% of GDP when the economic conditions allow.
It's whatever that means.
I mean, look, I think we should do 2.5%. I think defence is our most important thing. I wanted to pick Norman up on a point about, you know, Germany not having any nuclear weapons, therefore Russia are not going to attack them. If that were true, why are we sending money to Ukraine? Because the argument always is that we have to defend Ukraine to stop Russia marching through Europe. But you've just said they won't march through Europe because of
Russia
nuclear.
No, Russia, I think, or under Putin, has got Lithuania, Estonia, Latvia in its sights. It's about recreating the Soviet Union. That's what Putin wants to do. But he won't be using nuclear weapons to do that. He'll be using conventional forces, drones, the missiles we're seeing raining down in Kharkiv.
But you have just said that nuclear won't keep him out. So why do we need it? Because other countries have got it.
No,
so,
I'm saying that he won't apply a nuclear weapon on a NATO country because the NATO response will be forthcoming. Because under the NATO agreement, an attack on one NATO country is an attack on all NATO countries.
But if none of those NATO countries have a nuclear deterrent, then it doesn't work.
Well, America's got a nuclear deterrent.
Yeah, but they're quite a long way away.
It doesn't matter.
We're right at the forefront of Putin, aren't we?
It doesn't matter. We're part of the same agreement, which is held very effectively. NATO agreement is the most effective defence agreement ever the world's had.
One of the things I didn't like what he was saying there was the cutting of 10,000 defence staff there as well. The infrastructure is well known that the housing situation and conditions is really, really bad, and that is a problem within the forces. And then to say we're going to take away 10,000 of the staff and the people that operate this and make all of this happen is robbing Peter to pay Paul.
Yes, because I would suggest that maybe those staff were not the ones that they brought on board during COVID, and maybe they should look at all of those COVID-appointed staff to find out, do we still need those now?
OK. Guys, got to leave it there. We'll see you again in 45 minutes' time. Thank you very much indeed. We'll be back after a quick weather update. Alex Burkle, good morning.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Morning, here's your GB News weather from the Met Office. It's a bit chilly out there at the moment, but for many of us it's going to be a dry day with some decent sunny spells. Watch out for a touch of frost in some rural spots, and there are already a few showers in parts of the southwest and towards North Sea coastal parts, and here some of them will continue as we go through the afternoon as well. Otherwise, a decent amount of sunshine, especially across western parts of England and Wales and across much of Scotland and Northern Ireland too. Despite the sunny skies though, it is going to feel a little bit chilly. Temperatures below average for the time of year generally, most places into double figures, but just about for some, particularly towards the northeast. As we go through tonight, and most of the showers will die out, and so it is going to be dry for many of us. There will be a bit more cloud perhaps towards eastern parts and a little bit more blustery here, but elsewhere calmer and clear skies means temperatures will take a bit of a drop. A bit more frost around first thing tomorrow morning, then this morning a chilly start for many of us. Again, as we go through tomorrow, a few showers to watch out for across parts of central England into Wales. There may be a few dotted here. Also towards the northeast, across eastern parts of Scotland, some fairly frequent showers and perhaps a little bit breezier here, but otherwise, again, generally fine and dry for many of us. Perhaps just a bit more cloud around compared to today. Nonetheless, many of us will see some sunny spells. Temperatures still a little bit on the low side, most places just about getting into double figures.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In Murray, the A95 is closed in both directions off the A941 at Craigellachie. After an accident yesterday afternoon, the A1M in North Yorkshire is closed in both directions between junctions 48 and 47 between Borough Bridge and Allerton Park. So after an accident overnight, there are long delays as you divert. Train services have been stopped between Wakefield Westgate and Wakefield Kirkgate because of a signalling problem. On Merseyside, Balliol Road in Bootle remains closed eastbound off the A565 Derby Road after a spillage earlier this week, and train services are suspended between Shepherd's Bush and Watford Junction because of overhead line problems, and between Barnham and Horsham where overnight engineering works have overrun, with some trains diverting via Brighton. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
It's the final week to see how you could win our biggest prize yet. With thanks to Variety Cruises, a family company sailing since 1942, you have the chance to win a £10,000 7-night small boat cruise for two. With flights, meals, excursions and drinks included, you'll be able to choose from any one of their 2025 Greek adventures. Plus, you'll also win £10,000 in tax-free cash to make your summer sizzle. And we'll pack you off with these luxury travel gifts. Hurry, as lines close on Friday. For another chance to win a prize worth over £20,000, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB04 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
A very good morning to you. It is fast approaching 7 o'clock. It is Wednesday, the 24th of April. It's lovely to have your company.
Yeah,
Ooh,
nice to have you on board. Eamonn Holmes and Isabel Webster's just dropped her pen and marked her beautiful yellow.
Have I?
No, you haven't. Don't joke. Right, here are the headlines on this Wednesday morning. The biggest boost for defence spending in a generation. The Prime Minister vows billions more by the end of the decade.
We're announcing the biggest strengthening of our national defence for a generation. Over the next 6 years, we'll invest an additional £75 billion in our defence.
Serious questions over whether Rwanda flights will act as a deterrent after 250 migrants attempted to cross the channel following the deaths of 5 yesterday.
A new campaign to shocking statistics reveal 19.5 million food items are wasted every single day.
And the last surviving veteran of a World War II Special Forces regiment has been brought home to join the Chelsea pensioners and will be sharing his story this morning.
Kids should know more about the sacrifice their forefathers made. Not me, I'm no hero, but all the RAF boys have died and people like that, they don't realise that. They don't know much about it. They don't even know who Hitler was, half of them.
Well, Chelsea's not really the right place to be at the moment. Arsenal back on top of the Premier League as they battered, in Maurizio Pochettino's words, a soft Chelsea, 5-0. Leicester City on the verge of heading back to the top flight, also winning 5-0 against Southampton. And Ronnie O'Sullivan says he's not the greatest snooker player ever, but goes for a record-breaking 8th world title from today. And who'd bet against him?
Hello, it's a bit chilly out today, but at least for many of us it is going to be largely dry and there will be some decent spring sunshine too. I'll have the details in the full forecast.
Now, all this defence spending news leading the headlines today, and I was asking you what you think. Maybe you've been in the forces, maybe you are in the forces, and you have a suggestion how the money should be spent or how the money's being wasted.
Yeah, and lots of people reacting to some of the comments on the programme so far on the Your Say section of our website. Michael Izzard, he says the world's becoming a much more dangerous place with more potential adversaries with nuclear capability. And Norman Baker thinks it's a clever idea to give up our nuclear submarines. He must be out of his mind, and that's had 8 likes and lots of replies so far. Cliff Ellis, not keen on Grant Shapps this morning. Why have you got that globalist warmonger on? All this money from our hard-earned country is going to Ukraine whilst the UK economy is in a shambles.
Now, there's a big argument like this in the USA as well, where there's a lot of resistance to Ukraine being funded. But if you don't fund them, what is the alternative?
And America's in a slightly different position to us. They can afford perhaps to be a bit more isolationist. We are in Europe. Russia is right on our border. So there is a strong argument, I would suggest, and certainly I think most people would agree, that we do need to keep supporting Ukraine at the moment, because who'd be next?
Do you agree? Don't you agree? Who would be next? Let us know. The time, 3 minutes past 7, and the biggest defence boost in 10 years. So the Prime Minister is saying he's going to increase defence spending. Suddenly, he's going to do this, just out of the blue, to 2.5% of GDP, an extra £75 billion.
Yes, he made the announcement in Poland yesterday, and he stressed, whilst the UK is not on the brink of war, he did claim the extra money would put the country's defence industry on a war footing.
As Churchill said in 1934, to urge the preparation of defence is not to insert the imminence of war. On the contrary, if war was imminent, preparations for defence would be too late. I believe we must do more to defend our country, our interests and our values. So today I'm announcing the biggest strengthening of our national defence for a generation. We will increase defence spending to a new baseline of 2.5% of GDP by 2030.
Right, let's get the views now. Deputy Editor at Spiked, it's Fraser Myers this morning. I just don't know, but Sunak, it just makes me laugh all the time how he snatches defeat from victory all the time. But, you know, he tries to make out, I have just suddenly woke up this morning and decided, not having this anymore, I'm going to spend all this money on defence. Well, who was cutting defence? Who was cutting defence in the first place?
Well, you saw him there quoting Churchill. He wants us to think of him as Churchill, not Chamberlain, in the face of the, you know, growing global threats. And yet, of course, he has been the one presiding over the degradation of the armed forces, you know, the lowest level of armed forces in 2 decades. I mean, it's interesting, you had Grant Shapps on earlier, you know, asking him where some of the money is going to come from, and him saying that actually some of the MOD has to be cut in order to...
10,000 jobs from the Ministry of Defence.
And, you know, there might be a case to say the MOD is very inefficient. Their procurement systems are a complete mess. I don't think that's probably not the fault of the civil servants themselves who are going to lose their jobs. You know, it has come as a bolt from the blue. It sounds much more like this is an election gambit.
Well, there are local elections next week, Fraser. I hate to be cynical.
There are local elections. There are members of the Tory right who need to be, who think Sunak is weak on defence, because clearly this is not a strategic decision, because he is not going to be Prime Minister.
We've got a massive red invoice coming in and saying all these munitions you've bought, they've got to be paid for. And then there's this spending, which will not go spending in the future. It'll be spending for what we've spent in the past, apparently.
Well, that's often how governments and ministers sort of fiddle the books to make pledges sound more exciting than they are. I mean, one of the things that worries me slightly is not just the state of the armed forces as we've discussed, but also just the broader state of the West's industrial capacity. I mean, if we're talking about rearming, what happened only a few weeks ago, the Port Talbot Steelworks is going to close down a huge part of its operations. It's not going to be able to make virgin steel. That's the thing you need to build ships, to build weapons, to make guns.
And also our GDP is pretty poor anyway. We've also seen borrowing went up more than expected yesterday. We know how many people are economically inactive. Last week, 1 in 5 of us not contributing anything to the economy. It's difficult, but he's laid down the gauntlet effectively, hasn't he, for Labour? And he knows perfectly well, he's not an idiot. I mean, Rishi Sunak is a numbers man. He knows he's not going to be in the job much longer. This won't be his problem.
Absolutely. And the pressure is now on, obviously, for Labour to match the pledge. I mean, they've been doing this a lot on the sort of economic front, where essentially the Tories promising something and then saying, Labour, can you do the same? Will it meet our fiscal rules? I mean, they might think it's clever politics, but I think the public sees through it.
What would you do, Fraser, with the armed forces? I mean, when you look at things, I suppose we've got to evolve. We've got to be smarter. There's got to be new technology raised. There's got to be different ways of fighting wars. Is prevention better than cure?
I think, we need to start asking questions about what the armed forces are for. I think there have been, not so much at the moment, but in the past 10, 20 years, I think there's been too much sort of military adventurism. We've been caught up in wars that we shouldn't have been caught up in, particularly in the Middle East. Today, less so. I think there is a moral case for arming Ukraine, for defending Israel, defending our allies, as the world gets more dangerous. But I think that's got to be the more fundamental question. What is the purpose of the British Army?
Well, I was interested in Norman Baker, our newspaper contributor, earlier on. And Norman's a former government minister. He was part of the coalition government. He's a Lib Dem. And he's saying immediately we should get rid of the nuclear deterrent. We should get rid of our submarines in the sea. We don't have too many of them, 5 or so. But I would have imagined, and I think that's been reflected by people listening and watching today, that they are the biggest deterrent we have. That, you can get rid of tanks, you can get rid of aircraft,
personnel.
But surely you can't get rid of your biggest deterrent.
Well, certainly, the way that the falls in personnel are going, you wouldn't want to rely on purely conventional means to defend the UK. Now, obviously, nuclear weapons is a very complicated conversation. You don't want to be the one you do not want to get anywhere close to starting a nuclear war. God help anyone who has to make that decision of having your finger on the trigger. No one wants to be in that position. But yeah, I think it seems odd at a time of increasing global tension to want to scale back defence.
Mark Jones has got in touch. It should be nearer 5%. That was the percentage of GDP it was during the Cold War era, wasn't it?
Is that right?
Yeah. Which, this sort of talking about the peace dividend has run out, but we haven't matched our spending, have we? So lots of people saying the global defence should be increased to 3%, 3.5% or more for the global situation. That's Stephen Lang. Support Ukraine now or put boots on the ground later. That's what Dan Dare says. So lots of you really engaged in this story. I suppose the question is, with all the problems that we have at home, the amount of, if we're talking of everything as a proportion of our GDP that we spend on the NHS, if we're talking about our schools, if we're talking about all of our public services, our potholes yesterday, can we afford...
I've given up on those.
Can we afford it? Or do we just have to accept, you know, poorer standards now and spend more on defence?
What we do is we please too many people. We spend too much money. Everybody who moans and groans gets money, right? And you should actually turn out and say, what is actually important for the country? And is defence spending the most important thing? I would imagine security of the country is number one.
Defence of the realm.
Defence, police, prisons, you know, justice system, all that sort of thing, health service. The thing that always depresses me about health, I think health is very, very important, but goodness sake, you could never stop spending on health.
Well, exactly. It's a bottomless pit.
Look at you this morning. What's wrong with you? What are you
everything.
Yeah, everything this morning. We could spend the whole budget on you today.
Brain transplant would be good.
There is a sense, you know, just broadly that the public realm is degrading, that everything is getting a bit shabby, and perhaps that becomes even more dangerous when it comes to defence. More dangerous to have a dilapidated armed forces than to have dilapidated roads, even though we deserve neither of those things. I think the key to this is, you know, we've got to get a lot more serious about economic growth. That seems to be the missing thing.
What? Liz Truss economy?
Well, she's stolen that and made it a dirty phrase, I think.
Not the Liz Truss kamikaze method. But, you know, the fact is that if we are wealthier, then we can afford to pay for the things that we want, not just defence, but excellent health service and excellent...
How to inspire people to get back to work.
And it is possible. We shouldn't, you know, we shouldn't accept the sort of lower standards that seem to be coming from the political class.
I agree.
Fraser, fascinating listening to you. Thank you very much indeed. Fraser Mars from Spiked, thank you. Right, today is a day called Stop Food Waste Day, right? And the new figures show that nearly 20 million food items are thrown away every single day in Britain.
Yeah, and a third of us have admitted to throwing away food solely based on the best before dates, with 1 in 4 tossing it away without even checking if it is still edible.
Co-founder of Too Good To Go, Jamie Crummy. That's a good name for a guy in the food business, Crummy. That's very good. Jamie, look, tell me this, my friend. This is all very well and good, and you having a moan about all this, but why do I care? Why does it make a darn bit of difference in anything? What's the reality of all of this by throwing stuff, by sniffing something, looking at a date and thinking, oh, maybe not, and chucking it away?
Well, I'm glad you've asked me that. And it's probably would be a terrible thing if we started throwing food away. You know, actually, if we zoom out a little bit and look at the scale of the problem, you know, 40% of the food that we produce globally ends up getting wasted. And this has huge ramifications, not only from a financial point of view. You know, you were just speaking earlier about, you know, the defence costs and things like this.
But Jamie, let me say, Jamie, that's not my problem. That's not my fault. That is these greedy food producers that feed us poison day after day and all sorts of rubbish and processed, I can't say the word rubbish again. So the point is, we are only the receivers of this. We only go along to the shop and buy a packet of biscuits or whatever. We're not in control of this, I would say to you. It's the food producers.
You raise a very valid point there. And of course, food producers, food retailers have a huge responsibility in all of this to help us reduce food waste. You know, as I was going to say, you know, food waste itself is one of the leading contributors to climate change, resulting in 10% of the world's greenhouse gas emissions. But there are things that we can do as individuals. And as you said earlier, you know, nearly 19.5 million food items are being wasted every single day because we as consumers are confused
It's
about...
be wasted. Jimmy, it doesn't matter if it's in my cupboard or my fridge or on a supermarket shelf. If I don't buy it and don't use it, it's still going to waste on the supermarket shelf.
Is that what you're going to say? Eat it, even if the best before date's gone and it's not got green, fluffy, mouldy bits. You should consume it.
You took the words right out of my mouth. Yes. In short, what it is we're trying to say is, you know, once food has gone beyond its best before date, that food itself is still safe to consume. But the problem is there are so many different labels out there. We have use by dates, best before dates, display until, sell by, and the list can go on.
Yeah.
And because of all of these different labels, there's a huge amount of confusion. And we as consumers, you know, don't really know the difference.
But we'll get rid of the labels then.
Yeah.
Why aren't you going to government or the food producers and say, get rid of your labels?
So we are doing that actually, Eamonn. And part of this campaign is here at Too Good To Go, we've teamed up with a whole host of retailers and FMCG brands to print a label on pack, which tells consumers to, you know, use their senses and trust their senses. So to look, smell and taste their food.
I keep cringing when you say that. Sorry to interrupt, but I mean, my mum was born in 1950. Perfect example of a post-war baby. They didn't waste a thing growing up. She's so frugal and sensible with everything to this day in her 70s that I'll often catch her at the fridge door, having a little sniff, checking whether or not it's gone out. No one else will want it, but bless her heart, she will eat it because she can't bear to waste a thing. And that has made me the opposite way. I can't bear to do the sniff test. I can't bear to make my children eat the stuff that's going off in the fridge the way that my mum made us when we were growing up. It's something, we're human beings. We enjoy our food with our eyes, with our nose. If something's a little bit, you know, not perfect, we don't want to consume it, do we?
Well, we're talking here about, you know, food itself, right? And I think we should make this clear distinction between use by date and best before products. And I think this is part of the problem. Use by dates, you know, they themselves are for safety guidance metrics. They're for foods like fish, like chicken, like meats. So once that's gone beyond the date, you know, you're probably going to get sick if you eat that. So we're not trying to encourage people to eat food that isn't safe to eat. What we're talking about here is food that's gone beyond its best before date. We're talking about fruit and veg. We're talking about pastas. We're talking about cereals. We're talking about milk. Now, you may be pointing the finger at your mother, but, you know, I'd actually champion what she's doing.
Yeah.
You know, all probably, you know, sniff the milk before we pour it in our tea and coffee this morning or on our cereals. We're just trying to put that confidence back into consumers because, as I mentioned earlier, food waste itself is not only a huge financial problem, it's a huge environmental problem as well.
Well, your label tells me your time's up, Jamie. We've got to say goodbye to you. Thank you for that. Jamie's the co-founder of Too Good To Go. So have a think about what you're going to touch today or use today or not use today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jamie. Appreciate it. Right.
Jamie says smell the milk. I could not make me
that's
sick.
the thing, because every now and then you smell it and it is too far gone, and then you've got your nostrils filled with that cheesy, rancid milk smell.
I can't have milk.
I know, but then we're part of the problem.
No, well, part of the problem was at primary school. When we were at primary school, we used to get the free milk before Mrs. Thatcher took it away. And the milk was set on top of radiators and it curdled. And people also did things. They had straw in their milk and they'd blow into it. Bubbles, everything. It was gross. It was disgusting.
I had free milk at school and I loved it.
Put me off milk for life.
Elaine Parish, Isabel, trust your mum. She's right. Unless you plan your food, there's no waste, then sniff it. Look at it. We cannot waste food. Who can afford to waste food? Livy Wilkes. We were less wasteful last century than we are now. Everyone used local shops and bought what they needed. You could buy 2 Link sausages, 2 eggs, 2 rashers of bacon wrapped in paper. You had milk delivered and bottles returned, making us more green. And you only have to look at all the bins we have to see what we throw away.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Now, you couldn't go and say, give me 2 sausages now. You have to have 6 or a dozen or whatever it happens to be.
And it was wrapped in paper. Anyway.
Wrapped in paper. instead of cellophane. Other news coming in this morning. Let's bring you up to date with what's there. The former leader of the Democratic Unionist Party, that's Sir Geoffrey Donaldson, he will appear in Newry Magistrates Court this morning in Northern Ireland. He resigned as DUP leader and was suspended from the party after he was charged with several historical sexual offences.
Emma Webber, the mother of the Nottingham attack victim Barnaby Webber, has written an emotive, open letter to members of a police WhatsApp group after her son's body was described as properly butchered. She's asked officers to have more compassion for victims and their families. Barnaby Webber, Grace O'Malley, Kumar and Ian Coates were all stabbed to death by Valdo Calacani on June the 13th last year.
Labour will announce today funding for 13,000 extra neighbourhood police officers by setting up a national police savings body. Now, there's a title for you. What will that be about? Apparently, it'll be used to buy vital kit, including police cars, IT equipment, forensic services and more. Labour says the move will help tackle huge disparities between police forces around the country. Now, on that point, let me say this. Just come back to me here. I have this thing about why every force in the land has different cars. Cut the music, forget the music. Why every police force in the land has different cars.
Why?
So they'll have Kias, they'll have BMWs, they'll have Fords, they'll have all sorts of things. Now, why can't there be a national body like this one Labour talking about and saying, right, we are going to a car manufacturer and we're saying supply every force in the land with a certain amount of cars or whatever it happens to be at a certain price, right? So you get the best price for the best vehicles available. This higgledy-piggledy.
Yeah.
And also, have you noticed that police cars, the transfers on them, the
different stickers,
the colours, they're different.
Yeah.
They're
Apparently,
not the same for each force.
The cost of a high-performance vehicle in Merseyside was £55,000, double the £27,000 paid by Lancashire.
Wow.
No rhyme or reason behind that. This is all based on a bunch of freedom of information requests that the Labour Party have done.
There will be
it's a
rhyme
really
or
good
reason
idea.
to that. One will be a BMW and one will be a Kia. But that's the thing, is the Kia good enough?
But it goes all the way down to motorcycle helmets, range from £467 in Derbyshire to £628 in Staffordshire. Even, I want to say they're truncheons, but they don't use truncheons, do they? The other bit, is it the truncheons? There were lots of different comparisons, and it's a really interesting breakdown there about equipment and how it's spent.
You look at waste, it is a complete waste. It's all... no, it could... Look, I'm listening to you.
Well, I want to throw a curveball in and just break some news I've just seen on the Press Association Newswire relating to the former Labour minister and crossbench peer, a prominent member of Parliament in his day, Frank Field, and that is the news at 81. We are hearing this morning that he has died. Yeah, his family have announced this morning, and he was former Labour minister, crossbench peer Frank Field.
Yes. New Frank Fields, that's very sad, very sad. Right, let's get the weather update. Good morning, Alex Burkill.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Morning, here's your GB News weather from the Met Office. It's a bit chilly out there at the moment, but for many of us it's going to be a dry day with some decent sunny spells. Watch out for a touch of frost in some rural spots, and there are already a few showers in parts of the southwest and towards North Sea coastal parts, and here some of them will continue as we go through the afternoon as well. Otherwise, a decent amount of sunshine, especially across western parts of England and Wales and across much of Scotland and Northern Ireland too. Despite the sunny skies though, it is going to feel a little bit chilly. Temperatures below average for the time of year generally, most places into double figures, but just about for some, particularly towards the northeast. As we go through tonight, and most of the showers will die out, and so it is going to be dry for many of us. There will be a bit more cloud perhaps towards eastern parts and a little bit more blustery here, but elsewhere calmer and clear skies means temperatures will take a bit of a drop. A bit more frost around first thing tomorrow morning, then this morning a chilly start for many of us. Again, as we go through tomorrow, a few showers to watch out for across parts of central England into Wales. There may be a few dotted here. Also towards the northeast, across eastern parts of Scotland, some fairly frequent showers and perhaps a little bit breezier here. But otherwise, again, generally fine and dry for many of us. Perhaps just a bit more cloud around compared to today. Nonetheless, many of us will see some sunny spells. Temperatures still a little bit on the low side. Most places just about getting into double figures.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Are the sponsors of weather. We are the sponsors of the Great British Giveaway, and here's what it is.
It's the final week to see how you could win our biggest prize yet. With thanks to Variety Cruises, a family company sailing since 1942, you have the chance to win a £10,000 7-night small boat cruise for two. With flights, meals, excursions and drinks included, you'll be able to choose from any one of their 2025 Greek adventures. Plus, you'll also win £10,000 in tax-free cash to make your summer sizzle. And we'll pack you off with these luxury travel gifts. Hurry, as lines close on Friday. For another chance to win a prize worth over £20,000, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB04 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Ten Hag, the Manchester United manager, he says Sunday was a disgrace, meaning the questions from the press about his team's performance. We'll ask Paul Coyte, who deserves to be branded a disgrace, right after this.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people. To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Sport, we're looking at the top of the Premier League and the top of the Championship, and goodness me, Leeds opening up for, not Leeds, but for Arsenal.
Leeds. Well,
Arsenal and Leicester City. So tell us more.
Doctor.
Big win for both of them last night.
Oh, yeah, and Arsenal are looking good. They are, you know, as much as it worries me because the North London derby's coming up on Sunday. Arsenal, they've scored more than 5 goals 7 times in the Premier League this year already. Chelsea were a sorry state, and Cole Palmer was out. We mentioned him yesterday, how good he's been for Chelsea. And Mauricio Pochettino saying, we're not the Cole Palmer team, we're Chelsea FC.
Well,
I think they prefer the Cole Palmer team was playing yesterday.
Yeah.
So
I think 41 goals he's been involved in either scoring or assisting with.
Yeah, he's honestly, he's been terrific. He's definitely going to the Euros. If he doesn't, it'll be a joke. He's 21 years old. But enough of him. It was all about Arsenal. So the heaviest loss ever lost that Chelsea have had to Arsenal. Worst London derby that Chelsea have had since 1986. So it's always with Chelsea, and I think Chelsea fans feel the same way. One step forward, couple of steps back, then he might have a couple forward and then another one back. It's just taking time. So whether they've got the patience in Pochettino, I don't know, but it's not.
That's a bad defeat.
It's
That's an embarrassing.
It's a horrendous.
Defeat.
You don't want to lose to rivals.
Yeah. Southampton, big loss to Leicester City, but Leicester flying in the Championship.
They really are now. And so they are 1 win away from going back up to the Premier League. 100 points is still possible, so they've got a couple of games to go. Southampton look like they're going to be in the playoffs, and it's Leeds, possibly. So we'll just have to see how things go there, because it's getting very close. There's only 2 or 3 games for most clubs left. Liverpool, I should mention, are away to Everton. So we've got a Merseyside derby tonight.
Yeah.
And there's talk about a new manager. So obviously with Jurgen Klopp going.
Yes, but this guy that's been associated with Liverpool from Feyenoord, never heard of him.
Have you not?
No.
Well, you might have heard of him because his name's been mentioned with a couple of jobs going. Leeds, I think it was when Jesse Marsch went, his name was mentioned. When Spurs were looking for a manager, his name was mentioned again. The reason is all clubs are looking for the best new cab off the rank, basically, and thinking, well, who could we go to? He's won the Eredivisie in Holland, so, with all respect, so did Erik ten Hag.
Yes,
and he's won the Dutch Cup as well. So he's won that this year, and they're thinking, oh yeah, what kind of football does he play? He plays attacking football, in entertaining football, which is what everybody wants. But whether it's going to work coming over here, I don't know. But he's the favourite at the moment for Liverpool.
Arne Slot.
Arne Slot.
Arne Slot.
That's
okay.
Arnie. You don't get many Arnies around these, do you?
Oh, so famous Arnie.
Schwarzenegger. Can't think of any other Arnies.
Anyway, Erik ten Hag, I think he's made a big mistake. Instead of coming out and saying United was pretty embarrassing on Sunday, it'll not happen again, we'll go to the final, we'll beat City, whatever. He starts criticising the press. He says the only disgrace on Sunday was the press questioning the United win.
Nonsense. Absolute nonsense, isn't it? You've got to... If you're playing against a Championship side, we've been through it. 3-0 up, 15 minutes to go, you end it, and then it ends up 3-3, and it looked like Coventry were going to win with that disallowed goal. You'd go out and say, look, it was not good, we were embarrassed. Like you say, we'll go again for the final. Yeah. But instead he's doubled down and gone, well, actually, no, it's a disgrace. Should we hear what he said? Is it worth us hearing?
Yeah.
This is when... this is at the press conference yesterday. So Erik ten Hag is being asked about it and whether he would feel embarrassed by what how Manchester United's performance was. This is what he had to say.
No, absolutely not. And you made it up, and no one made the question, is it embarrassing? No, the reactions from you was embarrassed.
Why do you say that?
Why, it is. The comments in football, top football is about results. We made it to the final, and that is a huge achievement. Twice in 2 years is magnificent. For me as a manager, 4 cup finals in 4 years. And so the comments are a disgrace.
Let's talk about how great I am. The
thing is, you can't talk about how great he is.
No.
Yeah.
I can't bear it.
Right,
really,
okay, Isabel, you have this thing.
Me rage.
Go on, Izzy.
I mean, look, my job is always to ask difficult questions, and if we, in a world where you can't ask difficult questions, all you get is these reporters lining up asking sycophantic questions, and then you don't actually have anyone holding the management to account of the football clubs or the players or any of that, representing the fans. It's like a Putin press conference.
But do you know why? Do you know why that is?
No.
And this drives me crazy.
Sponsorship, money.
It's not even so much that. There's a lot, and when you hear sports interviews, which just bugs me, and you think, well, why don't you ask this? Why don't you ask this? Because they are scared that the club will then say, you were out of order, you are not now, you're banned from the club.
And their TV company won't back them up.
Correct.
Because money and sponsorship is everything. Ooh. So these guys win and they can say whatever they want and no one can...
and thank goodness it's only football, don't shoot me, but, you know, to me, it's just everything that's wrong. And journalists, all you want to do is be able to ask questions freely, and I feel so sorry. And Jurgen Klopp did the same, and I thought that was outrageous.
Say more power to people that
who
go and actually have the nerve to do it, because I've spoken to presenters and commentators who afterwards, and have spoken to me afterwards and said, yeah, maybe I was a bit out of order, and I said, you weren't.
Yeah, they doubt themselves.
You absolutely
it's gaslighting of the worst order.
It is. Let's
it's not what fans want to see. Fans want to see real questions.
100%.
You must be really heartened by that win, that defeat, or whatever the heck it happens to be. Anyway,
like what I said.
We digress.
Well, that's all very well, but tell me, what's your favourite colour?
Yeah.
That's
whose
the sort of
birthday
stuff
is it today?
Right, do you want to go for these? Let's do the birthdays. OK, let's see how we go. We got the first one, please. Please, I think we have a picture of someone very well known. That's not me. So, there we are. Who is that?
Stuart Pearce.
Stuart Pearce, scoring for England, probably Euro 96, I believe. Yeah. So how old Stuart Pearce today, please?
Oh, I've interviewed Stuart Pearce recently. He's
psycho.
He's not as old as me.
I reckon 50.
Yeah.
Oh no.
55.
No. He's 60. He's I'd say he's about 62.
62 is the correct answer.
Seriously?
62 is correct. Let's go with another one.
That's terrible.
Come on, Isabel. Now, these... Now
50.
That's
now
me.
There's three.
Who is that?
There's three. There's the first one. Now, that is...
Who?
Lee Westwood. Lee Westwood, big Nottingham Forest fan, playing live golf at the moment. Now, there's Gabby Logan.
Yeah.
Now, these are all born on exactly the same day. Lee Westwood, Gabby Logan, there she is with Kenny, the husband there, on the bike ride. And the other one is the greatest Indian cricketer there's ever been, Sachin Tendulkar. So Sachin Tendulkar, Lee Westwood and Gabby Logan, all born on exactly the same day. So how old are they today?
52. I'm
52
fixated on this
is a good guess.
OK.
50.
It's close, but it's not right.
50.
51.
Oh, down the middle.
In the middle. One more. We've got time for one more.
Yep.
Who is this and how old is she? There we are. We talked about the other day. Dame Laura Kenny, the
cyclist.
Yeah, well, she's won more golds than any other
I don't
female
think she's that old.
No, I think she's about 33.
Yeah.
31, 33. Maybe I'll go 32.
Baby range.
What are you going with?
32.
32.
I feel like 31, actually.
What do you've got to accept your
31.
31.
33.
32.
Stop it.
Was it 32?
Yes.
32. 32.
Oh, well, we were in the right zone.
We're not disgraced.
It was very good, very good.
I do enjoy these games.
Good game.
Good game.
Highlight of my morning, I've got to say.
And the scores on the doors with Norman Baker and...
who's dressed as a snooker table, by the way, today, Norman.
Stop it. And actually, Renee's dressed as a snooker ball.
They're coming up.
Black and white. Sorry, stop talking.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. The A1M in North Yorkshire is closed in both directions between junctions 48 and 47 between Borough Bridge and Allerton Park. After an accident in the early hours of this morning, there are long delays towards the closure and as you divert. In West Yorkshire, there are some cancelled trains between Wakefield Westgate and Wakefield Kirkgate because of a signalling problem. On Merseyside, Balliol Road in Bootle remains closed eastbound off the A565 Derby Road after a spillage earlier this week. week. In Warwickshire, the A439 is closed southbound off the A46 at the Marroway roundabout in Stratford-on-Avon for an investigation. And Southern Rail services are suspended between Shepherd's Bush and Watford Junction because of overhead line problems, and between Barnham and Horsham where overnight engineering works have overrun. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task. This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
One of the things we're going to talk about later on in the programme is the Labour Party are coming up with this new body which will regularise pricing and save money throughout British police forces, OK? All throughout the land. And Isabel's hit upon some examples of what will be regularised.
Right, so in Merseyside, the cost of a high-performance police vehicle is £55,000, which is twice the price in Lancashire. Makes no sense, it's 27 grand there.
Well, they like their wheels in Merseyside,
Maybe,
obviously.
but that's not justification. That could save money, that could put bobbies on the street. A standard police baton, 20 quid in Leicestershire, apparently, for the force there, 120 in Northamptonshire. And this one's interesting. Extracting data from a mobile phone in Derbyshire costs £5,100, 5 times more than in Staffordshire police force.
My word, my word. Right, well, anyway, we have got Rennie Honderkamp with this and Norman Baker, and they're talking about this story and various other stories in the news. Norman, I'm just surprised that there is not more regularisation amongst the police forces in the land.
Well, I mean, there are a vast number of different police forces, and they all run their own affairs, and that's probably why we got to the situation which is here. That actually, this press release from Labour is actually quite a good press release.
I agree, yeah.
Identifying some of these inconsistencies. But, you know, one of the problems, I think, is the public sector is not very good at commissioning. It's not very good at arranging contracts. And I saw when I was at the Department for Transport, huge waste of money because the staff, the civil servants there, weren't qualified to handle complicated contracts. And in my time, we lost £100 million unnecessarily on the West Coast Main Line simply as a consequence of that. So I think what's happening here is that we're getting bits and pieces of equipment commissioned from different police forces without them necessarily knowing what the best value is.
You see, I have this thing, Rennie, about cars. And I just don't understand why police cars aren't standardised throughout the whole country.
And made in the UK.
Yes, yes.
That's a good idea.
You put an order in, you put a submission, and you say, we want 100,000 police cars around the country. What are you going to charge us for? What are you, Ford, going to charge us? Kia, what are you going to charge us? BMW, what are you going to charge us? and get the best price?
So this has been one of my bugbears in the NHS since I joined, having been in private business beforehand. I worked in a major London teaching hospital where the syringes were bought from different companies floor to floor and then didn't fit the machines that they were paying maintenance contracts to. The NHS has this, exactly the same. It's called NHS procurement. It was set up to do exactly the same thing. It has failed because NHS trusts don't all belong to it, so they don't all use it. And I'm like you, Eamonn. I used to say, why don't we say to all of the drug companies, we are going to buy our penicillin from 5 of you. Get your bids ready. And actually, you can give us a golden handshake as well, because you can't buy it from one. You have to buy it from more than one. Why are we buying it bit by bit across the country from different people? And it's the same in the police. But we're going to spend money on a body to actually do this, and it won't work because people won't play with it, just as it hasn't worked in the NHS.
Well, that's depressing, but it also feeds into the defence story today about just procurement and civil servants and contracts and defence spending and waste. It is a worry. It certainly needs reform, and maybe Labour is right to highlight it and sort of expose the waste and the discrepancies. Maybe it will change.
If you look at defence procurement over the years, I mean, it's been a disgrace because everything that you order is late and it's over budget and sometimes doesn't work. And they never seem to learn the lessons.
No.
The MOD.
And it's, when you say late, out of date, by the time it comes into commission, out of date, being superseded and whatever. But why is that, Norman? You've been on the inside of government. Why does everything lag? Why does everything... There obviously are too many people involved in the decision-making process, one would have thought.
I come back to the point about the civil service. The civil service, which I've got a lot of time for the civil service, but they are not very good at handling commercial contracts. They don't understand private business properly.
They don't
get taken for a ride.
What it is it's not their money. So when you work for a private company, as I did, you spend every pound like it's your own. Civil servants aren't spending their money, they're spending ours, and they just don't...
That's partly true,
They don't feel it. And the problem is that just like a wedding, as soon as you say to somebody, I'd like some photographs, please, and you put the word wedding in front of it, it goes up 5 times.
Yes.
Same for anything in government. And actually, with the power of the NHS is the biggest employer in Europe. We should have the cheapest prices, not the most expensive.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think we can all agree on that.
I want to know whether I can thump you in Nottingham with a truncheon and it's £100 cheaper.
Will it snap?
It's
Is it made of jelly?
It cost me 20 quid and it cost me 120 quid elsewhere. That is a big, obvious, glaring
Well, I'm interested to know whether there are different criteria applied to whether the battle...
Or different types of criminals, who knows?
Are they particularly worse than
Maybe the £21 are just sticks from the local park.
Exactly, yeah, the green initiative there. We're going to take a quick pause from the papers, but we will be back with lots more for you with Renee and Norman after this.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Leading motoring organisation has called for all new drivers to be banned from giving lifts to friends for 6 whole months after passing their tests.
Yes, the AA says around 5,000 people every year are killed and seriously injured in crashes involving at least one young motorist. Graduated driving licences introduced with limitations imposed on a period of time after a driver passes their test. So a 2-tier system.
Well, is this sensible or yet more ageism when it comes to regulating our habits in the United Kingdom? Let's speak to Quentin Wilson, a motoring journalist and transport campaigner. Really interested to get your thoughts on this, Quentin. There are a lot of people who instinctively will say this is state overreach. This is telling adults that they can't do something that they've done for generations. What's your view?
Well, look, the recent accident with the convertible Mini where people were twerking in the back, this is due to driver education. The person in control of that car really should have told the passengers just to buckle up and stay still. We're not teaching kids to drive properly. We expect them to do all this stuff below the dashboard, grinding of gears, hazard perception, positioning of car, in this very, very small time window, when we should be doing it from school age, teaching hazard perception. So I've been a patron of an organisation called Young Driver, who's delivered 1.4 million lessons to 11 to 17-year-olds on private land with ADI qualified instructors with dual controls. And the accident rate for that group is 4%. The national average is 20%. So look, we can do this. We can reduce these fatalities if we teach kids earlier about road safety.
Is this an issue, frankly, with teenage boys and showing off?
The testosterone does always seem to come through, doesn't it?
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task. This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people. To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you say to me, in your day, Eamonn, in your time...
Back in the day.
Back in the day, I could sue you. I could sue you. And why, Norman, can I sue? If someone uses the phrase, back in your day, why can you sue?
Well, because there's a nursing assistant who took action. She sued for age harassment on the basis that a younger colleague had said the NHS operation that she was referring to had been free, quote, back in your day. And she decided this was so horrendous, she took this to an employment tribunal. And the judge declared that, yes, that phrase could be regarded as age harassment. I mean, it seems to me rather ridiculous.
Yes, because I want to hear about what it was like back in the olden days, before electricity, before cars.
You're looking at
to
Eamonn for
enlighten
that.
me. Well, both of you chaps, I'm being facetious. But, you know, there is a point about wanting to know about previous times.
It's called experience.
Yeah.
You know, and experiences that you've gone through, which all aren't necessarily bad. I think it's wrong to just assume that because it was history, it's wrong, or it's bad, or it's outdated.
Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, the first time I heard the phrase actually was back in your day, back in my day, when John Lennon used it on television with Eric Morecambe. And he said, "Oh, it's not like in your day, Eric." You know, and Eric was faked this outrage. Of course, he wasn't bothered at all. But he faked this outrage. But I mean, you know, it can be just seen as a way of just saying you're a bit older than me. Well, so what? You know, is that the
But also could be
to say?
perceived as you're not relevant. That's what it could be as well.
Ageism, though, is definitely rife, and I do think it's really getting worse, actually, I feel.
Yeah, and I think as we move into a world where people are going to need to work until they're 70 before they get their pension, we need to overcome this ageism, which certainly does exist. But then I guess there's all sorts of things like older workers with more experience will be more expensive than a younger worker.
And often not as up to speed with changes in technology. So the younger people who are paid a pittance compared to the older ones then feel frustrated because they think it's unfair. But I actually think it's to do with people all scattering around the world, not living near their grandparents, not really interacting with that older generation.
Generations.
Yeah, because I think I will always have respect for elderly people because I was so close to my grandparents until they died.
Yeah,
and you understand what they brought to the party.
Absolutely.
Rennie, let's talk about family connections on that subject. So, like father, like son, don't count on it, suggest scientists. This is front page of the Times today.
I'm quite astounded that this is front page of the Times because it's a non-peer-reviewed paper. It has not been examined for its inconsistencies on how valid it is. And that really upsets me because that happened in COVID, where we saw this rush of papers that were not peer-reviewed, so not critiqued, the inconsistencies weren't pointed out. So that's number one to know about this study. Basically, what it says is only about 40% of our personality comes from our parents. The rest is
how much of a percent?
40, about 40%.
So that study suggesting that people inherit surprisingly little of their parents' personality.
Well, 40% I think is quite a lot.
I think that is. It was almost half, some might say. But also, we all see it. We all see it. And we all know the phrase that apple never falls far from the tree is true, because I can see it in my children. I'm sure you can see it in
we said this
yours.
last night. We went out for dinner last night because it was my birthday yesterday.
Oh, happy birthday.
And so we went for a very early dinner. And my daughter is a mini-me in everything. Her mannerisms, the things that she says, you know, everything. And it has to have an effect because they learn from us, they mimic us. Maybe as they get a bit older, that gets watered down. But I'm not convinced by this study either.
Yeah, me neither. What do you think, Norman?
Well, I mean, I think inherited, does that mean on day one that you genetically inherit something, or does it mean that you're in the same environment as you grow up? In which case, of course, you pick up your parents' attributes.
No, but I mean, you can have the same environment and two children, and you can see one of your children takes after one of the partners, and the other child takes after the other. I see that all the time, and that's not environment. I'm no scientist, but I don't buy this
nor
one.
is this paper either yet.
Well, there we go. Makes two of us.
Well, it just might be that one child feels more comfortable with one parent than the other parent. I mean, who knows? But
Doctor, a quick word about Ozempic. This is this diabetic drug which is being used for weight loss.
OK, this is really interesting because there are women in America who are being told by doctors to take it if they want to get pregnant. That's dangerous because the manufacturer says that you shouldn't take this for at least 2 months before you get pregnant because of birth defects in animals. There's a really important point here. Women have safer pregnancies and get pregnant more if they are of a healthy weight. So that's number one.
But that's why the doctor will be telling them to take it.
Yes.
If they're obviously having fertility problems, is lose weight.
It's nothing to do with the drug.
But this is seen as the shortcut to getting slimmer.
If you lose 5 to 10% of your body weight, you can trigger ovulation in someone who has polycystic ovarian syndrome. So there are other safer drugs that you can use, like metformin helps you lose weight. It's another diabetic drug, but it doesn't have these worries. So I think the message here is, firstly, you can't cheat. You need to lose weight healthily. And secondly, don't put a drug in your body that might damage your baby.
Yeah.
OK, Rennie, thank you very much indeed. Norman, appreciate it. See you both again in 45 minutes. Right now, you're going to see the weather with Alex Burkle.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Morning, here's your GB News weather from the Met Office. It's a bit chilly out there at the moment, but for many of us it's going to be a dry day with some decent sunny spells. Watch out for a touch of frost in some rural spots, and there are already a few showers in parts of the southwest and towards North Sea coastal parts, and here some of them will continue as we go through the afternoon as well. Otherwise, a decent amount of sunshine, especially across western parts of England and Wales and across much of Scotland and Northern Ireland too. Despite the sunny skies though, it is going to feel a little bit chilly. Temperatures below average for the time of year generally, most places into double figures, but just about for some, particularly towards the northeast. As we go through tonight, and most of the showers will die out, and so it is going to be dry for many of us. There will be a bit more cloud perhaps towards eastern parts and a little bit more blustery here, but elsewhere calmer and clear skies means temperatures will take a bit of a drop. A bit more frost around first thing tomorrow morning, then this morning a chilly start for many of us. Again, as we go through tomorrow, a few showers to watch out for across parts of central England into Wales. There may be a few dotted here. Also towards the northeast, across eastern parts of Scotland, some fairly frequent showers and perhaps a little bit breezier here. But otherwise, again, generally fine and dry for many of us. Perhaps just a bit more cloud around compared to today. Nonetheless, many of us will see some sunny spells. Temperatures still a little bit on the low side. Most places just about getting into double figures.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In Fife, the A917 is closed in both directions off the A915 at Upper Largo, where cars overturned. The A1M in North Yorkshire is closed southbound from junction 48 at Borough Bridge to 47 at Allerton Park after an accident overnight. There are long delays towards the closure. And as you divert, northbound though has reopened with just the outside lane closed past the scene. On the M60 in Greater Manchester, 2 out of 3 lanes are closed clockwise after an accident between junction 27 and the Portwood roundabout and one at Stockport. There are queues from junction 23 at Ashton-under-Lyne. On Merseyside, Balliol Road in Bootle remains closed eastbound off the A565 Derby Road after a spillage earlier this week. And Southern Rail services are suspended between Watford Junction and Shepherd's Bush because of overhead line problems. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
It's the final week to see how you could win our biggest prize yet. There's an incredible £10,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. Plus, courtesy of Variety Cruises, a bespoke 7-night small boat cruise for two worth £10,000. With flights, meals, excursions and drinks included, your next holiday could be on us. Choose any one of their 2025 Greek adventures and find your home at sea. We'll also send you packing with these luxury travel gifts. Hurry, as lines close on Friday. For another chance to win a prize worth over £20,000, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB04 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQs live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQs live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Sorry. Oh.
8 o'clock is the time. It is. What day is it?
I don't know.
It is a Wednesday morning.
It's the 24th of April.
It is the
24th
of April. And thank you for being with us, my friends, for watching and listening. This is Breakfast on GB News. I'm Eamonn Holmes, and that's Isabel Webster.
Yeah, and here's what's leading the news this morning. It's the biggest boost for defence spending in a generation, with the Prime Minister vowing billions more by the end of the decade.
We're announcing the biggest strengthening of our national defence for a generation. Over the next 6 years, we'll invest an additional £75 billion in our defence.
Yes, the Prime Minister putting the UK, he says, UK defence spending on a war footing. Poland yesterday, Berlin today. He'll be meeting with the German Chancellor later, announcing cooperation, investment, and, he says, hundreds more jobs for Britain. I'll bring you the details.
And we will be live from Berlin this morning.
Big questions over whether Rwanda flights will act as a deterrent after 250 migrants attempted to cross the channel following the deaths of 5.
Sir Geoffrey Donaldson will appear in court today. He's charged with historic sexual offences. Dougie Beattie with the latest.
This is the end of speculation around the charges he levelled against Sir Geoffrey Donaldson as his case now begins in Newry.
And the last surviving veteran of a World War II Special Forces regiment has been brought home to join the Chelsea pensioners and will be sharing his incredible story today.
Kids should know more about the sacrifice their forefathers made. Not me, I'm no hero, but all the RAF boys have died, and people like that, they don't realise that. They don't know much about it. They don't even know who Hitler was, half of them.
There's somebody, Chelsea Pench, is happy with the result yesterday. Arsenal certainly didn't look like chokers or bottlers as they go back to the top of the Premier League after hammering Chelsea 5-0. Leicester City are on the verge of heading back to the Premier League. Also, they won 5-0 against Southampton. And although it happened 3 years ago, the Chinese swimming drug accusations won't go away as WADA are accused by USADA over a test by Chinada.
Hello, it's a bit chilly out today, but at least for many of us it is going to be largely dry and there will be some decent spring sunshine too. I'll have the details in the full forecast.
Leading today with the biggest defence boost in 10 years, the Prime Minister says he will increase defence spending to 2.5% of GDP. That will be, to the end of the decade, an extra £75 billion.
Well, earlier we spoke to the Defence Secretary, Grant Shapps, and he revealed that civil service cuts could pay for this new spending and will come from his own department.
The world, as we've been saying, as I was saying back in my speech in January, is looking more dangerous. I think it's very important for Britain to play its leadership part. The Prime Minister has stepped up and has done that in a very significant way. And I think this is very, very good news for the United Kingdom, our security, and also for our leadership in the rest of the world.
More on this as the Prime Minister continues his European trip. He's in Germany today. He's in Berlin. Let's go to Catherine Foster for us this morning to tell us more. What will be on the agenda? We had that big announcement yesterday. What are you expecting today, Catherine?
Yes, good morning, Eamonn and Isabel from Berlin. Poland yesterday, Berlin today. Rishi Sunak will be meeting with German business leaders, also the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz. There'll be a press conference this lunchtime. He's going to talk about Germany and the UK as Europe's powerhouses. They are the largest two economies in Europe. We expect him to announce joint work on artillery systems, which he says are going to bring hundreds of jobs to Germany and to the United Kingdom. We're also expecting some £8 billion of investment into the UK to be announced by with German businesses. So good news all around. I think yesterday the Prime Minister was trying really to lead by example with this big announcement of the increase in defence spending to 2.5% of GDP by the end of the decade. We know, of course, we're the second largest spender in NATO. Many European countries have simply not been paying their fair share for a very, very long time. I asked the Secretary General of NATO about this yesterday in the press conference. He was keen to stress that countries are in fact improving their record, but Germany here, they are a newfound convert to paying their bit really into defence spending. They've upped it massively, as you would expect, following the invasion of Russia into Ukraine. But there's many countries that are not paying that. Now, one other point, I also asked Rishi Sunak at the press conference about the military. It's all very well putting all this extra money in, but there is a recruitment crisis. Many of our young people simply have no interest in serving their country in this way. I asked him about that. And he was, of course, talking to troops at a military base near Warsaw, and he thanked them for their service. And he did also apologise. He said, I'm sorry that things like accommodation haven't always been to the standard that you would expect, and the kit, he said, we will do right by you. Of course, that's rather easier said than done.
Catherine, thank you very much indeed. Have you ever been to Berlin?
I've never been to Berlin.
Beautiful.
It's on the list. Yeah,
Beautiful
it's on the
city.
list. It's a very big party city as well. Big party scene.
My wife lived there for 3 years or 4 years or so. Her parents were in the armed forces, and they were based in Berlin. And I brought her back for her birthday one year to the house that she lived in. And she was very emotional about it and whatever. And I walked up in this little maisonette, and there was a woman washing the dishes. She was in her kitchen, and I thought, I'm going to ring the bell.
Did you?
Asked you, and so I went and I rang the bell. The woman came to the door and I said, excuse me, my wife used to live here and she lived here for 5 years, and is there any chance of seeing inside of it?
Slam the door.
And she went, no.
Oh, what a shame. Do you know, funnily enough, on Saturday, I messaged you, didn't I? We were at Thruxton Racecourse. My husband had got one of those racing driver days out, and it's near a lot of the army barracks, Middle Wallop and Andover and all of that, and that's where my husband's family were deployed for a while. So we did the exact same thing, went to his house where he grew up, showed the children. We didn't ring the doorbell, but we sort of took a picture, looked at it, imagined Liam as a child, and it's quite nice doing that. It was very disappointing they didn't let you in.
Oh, no,
maybe they didn't speak English and they thought you were a lunatic.
It was a bit, well, they probably thought I was a lunatic anyway. But, yeah, so that was that. The time now is 7 minutes past 8. We're going to bring you now two stories, a massive story in Northern Ireland. And the leader, or the former leader of the Democratic Unionist Party, Sir Geoffrey Donaldson, he will appear in Newry Magistrates Court this morning. He resigned as DUP leader. He was suspended from the party after he was charged with several historical sexual offences. We go to our correspondent from Northern Ireland, Dougie Beattie, on this one to explain more. And Dougie, there's a lot we can't talk about in relation to this case, so I'm not sure how tethered you are by what you can say or not, but over to you, my friend.
Yes, well, good morning, Eamonn and Isabel, and welcome to Newry. Yes, there has been a lot of speculation around this case. In fact, social media is full of it, and it could actually endanger the case itself. This is a political shockwave to Northern Ireland. Sir Geoffrey Donaldson is the longest-serving politician in Northern Ireland. He was the leader of the Democratic Unionist Party. He came from the Ulster Unionist Party, and he really came under the political spotlight in 1983 when he ran Enoch Powell's campaign for Westminster, in which Enoch took the seat for South Down. So that's the type of pedigree we're talking about here. This man is a political giant in Northern Ireland, and for the last 3 to 4 weeks since his arrest at the end of March, speculation has been rife as to what exactly he was facing. Well, that speculation will end today when we hear the charges that are read out against him. Now, of course, we can't report on them at this moment in time, but that will, about 10:30 this morning, that will happen. But really, he will understand, as most politics do, politicians do, the optics in and around this. We do believe he's in Northern Ireland this morning. We do believe that he will appear at that court. And for any politician, the optics of actually appearing at a court and saying, I didn't do it, and actually appearing here rather than by video link is most important to this case. This case, there is no doubt about it, will have damaged him beyond all belief politically. What he will be charged with and how he will explain that away is yet to be seen. And of course, he says that he is innocent in this and he will fight it for his defence right to the very last. So we will see today, does he arrive and will he speak to the media afterwards, and will he explain exactly what has gone on?
Well, I know you'll be there all day, and we'll be crossing back and forward speaking to you, Dougie, so good luck, my friend. Thank you very much indeed for your time this morning. Thank you. Dougie mentioning Enoch Powell there, it just made me smile. So I had a girlfriend at the time who lived 100 yards away from me, and Enoch Powell left the Conservative Party and he became a member of the official Unionists in Northern Ireland, right? So he had a seat in Northern Ireland, and he was campaigning, and he would call to my girlfriend's parents' house where she lived, because her father was a dental technician. Right. So Enoch would come and he would take his false teeth out.
Stop. Stop it. These stories.
He would take his false teeth out, this is true. And then her dad had to fix his false teeth. And he was a regular. He would then become a regular.
Didn't pay for it, wasn't a patient, just came to the door.
No, he didn't.
Sorry.
He literally came to the door and he said, would you fix my teeth? And her husband... He fixed the teeth. So it's quite strange, your claim to fame.
Yeah, what a story. Well, we'll add that to the list of incredible stories.
Time 11 minutes past 8 o'clock on this Wednesday morning.
Yeah, and some breaking news to lead our bulletin with this morning that we have received overnight. The former Labour Minister and the crossbench peer Frank Field has died at the age of 81. That's been announced by his family this morning. Lord Field of Birkenhead died in a London care home following a period of illness. He was director of the Child Poverty Action Group between 1969 and 1979 and the Member of Parliament for Birkenhead between 1979 and 2019.
Emma Webber, the mother of the Nottingham attack victim Barnaby Webber, has written an emotive open letter to members of a police WhatsApp group after her son's body was described as, I quote, properly butchered. She's asked officers to have more compassion for victims and their families. Barnaby Webber, Grace O'Malley Kumar and Ian Coates were stabbed to death by Valbo Callocane on June 13th last year.
Labour is announcing funding for 13,000 extra neighbourhood police officers today by setting up a national police savings body. It'll be used to buy vital kit, including police cars, IT equipment, forensic services and more. And they say the move will help to tackle huge disparities between police forces across the country. We'll be speaking to the Shadow Attorney General, Emily Thornberry, about that in around 45 minutes' time.
We've been talking about that Labour move throughout the programme this morning, and really it reeks of common sense politics. The fact that we have so many different police services or forces, call them what you will, and they all buy their equipment from different outlets and they pay different prices for it. And they have different, we were talking about the quality of cars. I mean, in some parts of the country, cars are double the price that they are in others. Why should that be the case? Why should this not all be regularised?
It's basic economics, economies of scale. If you're buying police cars for the entire country and all the forces, you get a better price than if you buy from lots of different places, all different prices. So, yeah, I think this is definitely to be tabled under the common sense politics category, and a lot of people would say it sounds like a good idea.
And what dictates whether you drive a Fiat Uno as a police car or a, BMW 6 Series.
Personally, I think the ones that can get 0 to 60 more quickly or, run more efficiently, those should be the criteria. But, we'll speak to Emily Thornberry about all of that and the rest of the day's politics a little bit later on. But in the meantime, Alex Burkle has your forecast. Cold, chilly start this morning, 3 degrees where we were.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Morning, here's your GB News weather from the Met Office. It's a bit chilly out there at the moment, but for many of us it's going to be a dry day with some decent sunny spells. Watch out for a touch of frost in some rural spots, and there are already a few showers in parts of the southwest and towards North Sea coastal parts, and here some of them will continue as we go through the afternoon as well. Otherwise, a decent amount of sunshine, especially across western parts of England and Wales and across much of Scotland and Northern Ireland too. Despite the sunny skies though, it is going to feel a little bit chilly. Temperatures below average for the time of year generally, most places into double figures, but just about for some, particularly towards the northeast. As we go through tonight, and most of the showers will die out, and so it is going to be dry for many of us. There will be a bit more cloud perhaps towards eastern parts and a little bit more blustery here, but elsewhere calmer and clear skies means temperatures will take a bit of a drop. A bit more frost around first thing tomorrow morning, then this morning a chilly start for many of us. Again, as we go through tomorrow, a few showers to watch out for across parts of central England into Wales. There may be a few dotted here. Also towards the northeast, across eastern parts of Scotland, some fairly frequent showers and perhaps a little bit breezier here. But otherwise, again, generally fine and dry for many of us. Perhaps just a bit more cloud around compared to today. Nonetheless, many of us will see some sunny spells. Temperatures still a little bit on the low side. Most places just about getting into double figures.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Well, it feels sometimes that summer is a long way away, doesn't it, with the forecast a little bit all over the place.
But not necessarily. If you enter our competition, the Great British Giveaway, where it's just full of sunshine and ships and sea and loveliness and £10,000 cash and lots of travel gifts, and you put it all together, it's worth 20 grand and it could be yours.
It's the final week to see how you could win our biggest prize yet. There's an incredible £10,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. Plus, courtesy of Variety Cruises, a bespoke 7-night small boat cruise for two worth £10,000. With flights, meals, excursions and drinks included, your next holiday could be on us. Choose any one of their 2025 Greek adventures and find your home at sea. We'll also send you packing with these luxury travel gifts. Hurry, as lines close on Friday. For another chance to win a prize worth over £20,000, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB04 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Busy day in sport, big results at the top of the Premier League, the Championship as well. New manager for Liverpool, we've got a name in contention, and Erik ten Hag, well, he
gone down in my estimation, I'm afraid.
Well, you don't like, and I think it's a very, very fair point you have, which is that football managers are often just given easy questions all the time.
Yeah, I don't like it when they tell the reporter what they should and shouldn't ask and what's a good question or not. Otherwise, we'll just be asking them what their favourite colour is.
Yeah, OK. Well, Erik ten Hag's favourite colour doesn't represent the press in any way. At the moment, he calls them a disgrace. Paul Coit with his view after this.
Patrick Christie's Tonight, weekdays from 9 p.m.
And I did want to give you a platform, but I also want to give you an opportunity to apologise to anyone that you might hurt, and also give a message now to people who might want to copy some of the things that you've done, because people have copied it. So is there anything you'd like to say about that?
So the first thing you addressed, yeah, I do want to say sorry, because I did say sorry in the BBC interview, and that's the only thing they put out as a clip. So I don't know why they tried to do that, but I'll say it again on GB News here. I apologise to all the victims in the past that I've may have caused distress to, may have harassed, may have mentally tormented in any type of way. I apologise to them because I didn't mean to do that, and I was just having fun at the moment, but I didn't realise that it would have negative repercussions and negative effects on their psychological way of thinking. So I apologise for that. And also, the one thing I have to say to the young people is social media isn't real. Like, what I've portrayed to the guys on the internet is that I'm this cool, I don't give a toss about anything. But me as a person, I really do care. And for people I don't really read comments on the internet, because if I was to do that, I would probably go into a depressive state. All I can say to you guys is, believe in yourself, and there's bigger things you can do out there than just being an absolute menace on the internet or being antisocial. Like, if you have ambitions, like I like to read, I like music. I want to go deeper into my passion so I understand me as a person and not what other people think I am.
You are an articulate young man. You are obviously intelligent as well when you talk like this. And I really hope, for your sake and for the sake of a lot of people who did take a negative influence from what you did initially, that you really don't go back down that route.
I have a child as well, and I have to be there, not just for me, but for my child, for my child's mother, for my mother. I have to be there for a lot of people. It's not just me. So I need to put in the work.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
A lot of business going on the top of the leagues, the top of the English Premier League, the top of the Championship. Paul Coit to tell us what happened, and two big scores, similar scores, 5-0.
Oh, I'll tell you what, the Arsenal did well against Chelsea, 5-0. Anybody that thought that Arsenal possibly were going to bottle it or were going to get a little bit wobbly and wouldn't have the guts for the end of it, I tell you what, they're proving them wrong, because Chelsea were destroyed by Arsenal yesterday. 5-0.
Were they destroyed or were they just rubbish? That's the thing. I mean,
6 of one, half a dozen of the other, or 5 of one and none of the other.
I think this is a brilliant result for Arsenal. Absolutely incredible. It's a 3-point lead now, I think, over Liverpool. You've got City trailing there as well.
Yep.
So tight at the top, not over by any means. But you look at the Chelsea situation and you say, look, you can lose 1-0, 2-0 to Arsenal, 3-1, whatever, but 5-0.
I predicted 3-0 to Arsenal yesterday. And I didn't think it was going to be as many as 5. Cole Palmer, this is the kid that was missing, 21-year-old. He's been a revelation. He's been Chelsea's best player by a long way. And he was ill and missed the game. And Pochettino said yesterday, you know, we're not just the Cole Palmer team. We are Chelsea Football Club. But it pretty much proved that without him, they really are in trouble. And that's right way to put it. What do you think of it so far? Rubbish. It was. They weren't very good. But Arsenal, They just are moving on, and there's a huge game on Sunday because it's the North London derby. So this is, I hate to use any cliches whatsoever, but all bets are off when it comes to it.
Is that at the Emirates or Spurs?
It's at Spurs. It's at Spurs. So Arsenal are going to go there very confident and thinking, is it going to be this high line where you get you get Spurs pushing forward the whole time, that they're going to be able to hit over the top? We'll just have to see how things go, but it will be a ding-dong.
Leicester look as if they're going to, well, they will be. The automatic promotion, they're just a point or so away from it.
Yeah, they're one win away.
Yeah, and that's in the Championship. Back to where they should be.
Yeah, they're 5-0, they beat Southampton. So they need to win just one of their next 2 matches. So they've got Preston or Blackburn, which you would imagine they would be able to get through. If Leeds lose at Queen's Park Rangers, because now we get into the permutations of who wins what and when it comes to points. Basically, if Leeds lose at Queen's Park Rangers on Friday, Leicester are automatically promoted, and then you've got Ipswich who are just behind them. So it's between Ipswich, Leeds and Leicester for the automatic promotions, whereas Southampton, they're probably just out of that now. They're going to be in the playoffs. How things look at the moment. It's still possible.
Very emphatic win, a very disappointing thing for them. Who's been connected? A name come out of the hat today about the next Liverpool manager. What do you think of Arne Slot?
Arne Slot. It's a lovely name, isn't it, Arne Slot? Arne Slot, the Feyenoord. So Arne Slot is... Every now and again, you get a European manager that appears that everybody thinks he's the guy. There's Arnie.
He looks like Ten Hag.
Yeah, it's like Ten Hag or Bruce Willis there. I think he'd probably prefer Bruce Willis. But it's that Danish manager look that seems to be on vogue at the moment. But there he is. He's the Feyenoord manager. He had success last year, and he took them to win the Eredivisie, and he's won the Dutch Cup this year. So they're thinking, well, this is the guy. He plays attacking football. He plays entertaining football. So maybe he's the one for Liverpool. There's nothing been done yet. Nothing's been sorted out yet. But something needs to be sorted out soon, because Jurgen Klopp's on his way at the end of the season. They're looking for the next manager. They know it's not going to be Xabi Alonso, because he is going to stay in Germany. So it looks like possibly Arne Slot, because English clubs have been interested in him.
I just have a feeling Erik Ten Hag may be on his way, a close season, and I just don't think he did himself any good in yesterday's news conference. He was asked, was he embarrassed by United's performance on Sunday? This is what he had to say.
No, absolutely not. And you made it up, and one made the question, is it embarrassing? No, the reactions from you was embarrassed.
Why do you say that?
Well, it is. The comments in football, top football is about results. We made it to the final, and that is a huge achievement. Twice in 2 years is magnificent. For me as a manager, 4 cup finals in 4 years. And so the comments are a disgrace.
But he misunderstands. They're not comments, they're questions. You know, it's...
Yes.
He's not sitting there going, well done, congratulations, that was lovely, fantastic. We're there to say, well, what could you have done better? Are you happy with this? Well, was that not a bit of embarrassment?
You're right. I mean, let's look at the evidence.
Let's look at the evidence. That's what I like to do.
Look at the evidence. Semi-final of the FA Cup on Sunday. Manchester United 3-0 up against Coventry, as you would imagine.
A team is a league below them.
Yes, and cruising. Then Coventry score. Then they score again. Then they get a penalty, score again. The tide turns, goes to extra time, and it looks like Coventry are going to win it. And then there's the offside goal.
They're leading on penalties, remember, then, in the shootout as well.
And they scored the first penalty. So... Anyway, you look at that and you can see it was a capitulation by Manchester United. There's no question, and that should not have happened.
So it was embarrassing.
It was embarrassing.
It's a legitimate question.
I don't think there's any Manchester United fans. I mean, Eamonn in point who's going to say I was embarrassed by what I saw.
If he thinks that Manchester United fans are sitting saying, "Yo, we did that absolutely brilliant class performance, whatever," we think we weren't worthy of it. Actually, we're a bit lucky to be there. We're delighted to be there. I mean, he's right from that point of view. He's got 2 finals in a row, the FA Cup final last year and this year. We didn't win it last year, we have to remind him. We're up against the same opposition this year as well at the end of the month. So it's all on his shoulders.
And really, what do you want to hear a manager say? If you're a fan of the club or a fan of any club, just be a little more honest, because you look at that and you think any credibility is out the window. Just be honest with me and say, listen, we let you down. It did get a bit wobbly. It won't happen in the next game. We've learned from it and we'll move on. But there was none of that. It was like, I've done this, I've done that.
They give us a good fight. Coventry were magnificent, but luckily or happily, we were better.
And this is Manchester United Football Club.
Tell us about the Chinese swimmers.
Oh, my goodness me. Right, so I mentioned this the other day. 23 Chinese swimmers were tested by China, who are the Chinese anti-doping agency. Interesting. They have one of those. Then WADA, who are the World Anti-Doping Agency, and USADA, who is the American Anti-Doping Agency. So Chinada did the tests, and they found that these Chinese swimmers had tested positive for TMZ, which is the heart medication, which was used by many others. So anyway, they tested positive. Cut a very, very long story short. WADA then took the evidence and went, actually, well, that's OK. If you said that it was tested and it was contaminated food, we believe you. From China. No offence, but really? Anyway, USADA have come along and USADA have said, hold on, this is nonsense. They tested positive, they should be banned. But WADA are saying, well, that's OK because it was just in food, which usually is not good enough.
Well, after all that,
I'm more exhausted than the actual athletes were by swimming 50 metres.
I just need a pina colada after all that.
Yes.
Hello, WADA.
Hello, I've been tested by USADA.
Isabel, any reaction to Ronnie O'Sullivan? He says that he doesn't think he's the greatest snooker player of all time. He may well be up there with Stephen Hendry, of course. He goes in now with 7 world titles. Yeah, going for the 8th. Today's going for the 8th.
I know Isabel is a big Ray Reardon fan and will not have a word said against Ray Reardon.
Absolutely.
But Ronnie O'Sullivan is the greatest of all time. There's no question. I mean, he's...
I think the style he has, but you know, you're talking about. You look at Steve Davis, you look at Stephen Hendry, amazing players. So many snooker players, just so brilliant. But
the shelf life is longer. The shelf life. I mean, the thing is, Ronnie's been around for so long.
He has,
41 titles. He's going for the big 3. He's already won the Masters, the UK Championship, and now the world title, which I would not put it past him that he'll win again, even though the crucible smells.
Well, good luck to
That's what they say.
We're not sure.
Not me.
It smells off, but it smells, apparently. So, thanks, Paul. Thank you very much indeed. We're going to take a break there after that.
We are going to go through the papers this morning, joined one last time by Norman Baker and Renee Hunderkamp. See you in a moment for that.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In Fife, the A917 is closed each way off the A915 at Upper Largo, where a car's overturned. In County Durham on the A66 is a lane closed eastbound, heading into Stockton-on-Tees, where someone's broken down between the Great Burton Roundabout and Surtees Bridge. The A1M in North Yorkshire is closed southbound from junction 48 at Borough Bridge to 47 at Allerton Park after an accident. There are long delays as you divert on the M60 in Greater Manchester. The outside lanes closed clockwise after an accident between junction 27 for the Portwood roundabout and one at Stockport. It's taking around 40 minutes in queues from junction 23 at Ashton-under-Lyne. On Merseyside, Balliol Road in Bootle remains closed eastbound after a spillage earlier this week, and Southern Rail services are suspended between Watford Junction and Shepherd's Bush because of overhead line problems. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're having some good conversations today with Norman Baker and Dr. Rennie Honderkamp with the stories that are making the news. And just ahead, Rennie, of the general election, broadcasters are put on notice to maintain due impartiality in their programmes ahead of the general election, as we always are.
And I think this is research that apparently Ofcom did about 18 months ago, actually, but it's just come to light in this press release today. And it basically is looking at, firstly, that the research shows that the viewers of and listeners to shows actually want there to be clear impartiality when people are reporting the news. They didn't find it that easy to differentiate between news and other current affairs, but that they did want there to be impartiality. And it pays particular attention to politicians presenting shows. And I think the nub of it is that they're happy with politicians presenting shows, but not news shows. So they shouldn't be presenting the news.
They can present the railway programmes.
They can.
Yes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
The life.
Even current affairs, as long as it's separated in some way from breaking news stories.
Yes, and it must be impartial so that they don't bring to bear their political allegiance.
Isabel raised something earlier. We were talking in terms of football, and this very much applies to politics and news, where people so often mistake a question as an opinion. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think people assume that if you're asking that question, you're espousing that view. Whereas I see my role as a news and impartial journalist to always just ask the opposing view to whoever I'm speaking to.
That's the point, the opposing
Devil's
view.
advocate,
So exactly, you ask a question to one party saying, isn't your plans unaffordable? And the other party, you say, aren't your plans unrealistic, or whatever you want to say. I mean, this Ofcom judgment today, or this press release from Ofcom, states about the general election that there should be impartiality. My understanding is GB News intends to have a period where there aren't politicians presenting programmes. during the general election, which is, in my view, absolutely right. It also says viewers and listeners strongly value impartiality as an important requirement, especially for news programmes. And that's also, I think, absolutely true. And I would also say this, that it's important that people hear a range of views. You know, no channel should become an echo chamber for its audience. People need to hear views they disagree with, which is why it's good that GB News with people like me on, frankly.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And I always think it's astonishing that, you know, Eamonn and I, on our breakfast programme, often get accused of a political leaning and political bias. Neither of us have any affiliation with any party. But then you go to one of the terrestrial channels that gets huge ratings every morning. One of the presenters is a former minister and is married to who will soon be a Home Secretary, probably, of the next government. Yes. And, you know, often is presenting somebody whose husband was a well-known and prominent Labour advisor, quite clearly a skew in the presenting team there, and they never get criticised.
Well, it does seem...
That's Good Morning Britain you're talking about.
Okay,
maybe.
But it does seem to be that this impartiality only applies to people that have right-leaning views, doesn't it? They don't really care if they're coming from the other side of things. And I think that points nicely to viewers and listeners to radio shows. They're not as stupid as our politicians think they are.
Well, on that subject, that's why we give such access to you watching and listening at home. And so much of what we do will be on your shoulders, and you can ask lots of the questions. And, you know, just for the record, I love telling this, I don't vote. I don't vote for anybody or anything, so that I can't even fool myself into thinking, was there a secret meaning behind that question or whatever. I don't vote for any of them, and I'm equally cynical about all of them. I have to say, though, obviously, Norman, and I think this is often overlooked, that there are MPs and elected representatives who really are there to serve the public and have a sense of public duty and whatever it is. There are scoundrels and there are rogues, and the system's often reeks and whatever, but there are a lot of very well-intentioned, good-meaning people.
Most politicians go into political life for good reasons.
Do you still think that's the case?
I do think that's the case. What happens is they end up compromising, not because they are evil, but because someone says, well, this doesn't really work in that particular way. Or if you do this for me, then I'll do that for you.
Well, just whipping the whole system.
You mustn't betray the party, so vote for this thing you don't believe in. And, you know, I ended up voting famously for tuition fees, which I thought was a horrendous policy in the coalition, and I felt dirty, actually, voting for that. But I was told by my leader and by others, you know, you're going to let the party down very badly if you're the only person who votes against, and so on. So you end up sometimes compromising your own beliefs, not very often, in my case, hopefully, but you do end up doing that. But politicians, by and large, are well-meaning. What happens, the safety always has to be accountability, freedom of information, so you can find out what people are doing in public life generally, not just politicians, but also independent news journalism, so people can ask questions and find out the facts. Find out what people don't want to be found out. That's very important. That's the way you keep things honest, is by having accountability and freedom of information.
I think if we did a straw poll of people watching right now, do they think that politics is still honest and is there transparency and freedom of availability of information, they would say no to all of those things. And I think because of that, they're feeling unheard, roughshod over, and they're sick and tired of politicians and don't feel they're in it for the right reasons.
I'll be very interested to see what the turnout will be at the next general election. I think apathy is probably going to be one of the biggest winners
I think Tory voters may well stay at home because they don't want to vote for anybody else. But I think Labour and Lib Dem voters may be encouraged to go out. It's what might happen at the general election.
Norman, is a marshmallow a sweet or an ingredient for cooking?
Well, from the serious to the frivolous, I suppose.
Well, this is a VAT question.
It's a VAT question. Yes, I mean, this harks back, in fact, to the famous debate about Jaffa cakes. You remember back about 30 years ago when people were discussing whether Jaffa cakes were a cake or a sweet or a biscuit or something, one of which was VAT-able and the other one wasn't.
What was the conclusion again?
It was a cake, therefore each cake was VAT. And the thing about marshmallows here, which I find slightly odd, is that there's been a debate about marshmallows and a case taken about this to see whether they are sweets or not. And HMRC, our tax people, say they are sweets. But the ruling has been that they're not sweet because the argument put was that they are ingredients in a barbecue, that you have a kind of skewer of stuff with meat on it, and you have a marshmallow at this, and therefore it's an ingredient.
Much as I don't give a damn about this story, I'm astounded that a marshmallow is viewed as an ingredient and not a sweet.
I agree with you.
Because we have them, my daughter eats the little ones, you know, the little baby ones, just as they are. They do go into other things sometimes. You roast them on their own on a fire. I think it's a ridiculous ruling.
But those ridiculous rulings apply. Isabel might be able to enlighten me on this, but there's fast food outlets, and there's certain things that you can't buy hot. You go into Greg's.
Oh, if you eat in or if you eat out, that affects whether or not you pay VAT.
So you can get a sausage roll, but it can only be served to you cold.
Oh, right,
that's true.
Yeah.
And it's really irritating. Really. And I tell you another thing that's really irritating. And Isabel and I were talking about this yesterday. Why do McDonald's not serve normal food on their menu until 11 o'clock in the morning? Why have you to eat this rubbish they have for eggs and whatever? What are they?
McMuffins.
Real proper breakfast. My backside it is. But basically, you can only buy eggs and McMuffins and things at McDonald's until 11.
They don't understand people who get up at 3 and want lunch at 10.
I hate to break it to you, it's all rubbish.
Yeah, whether
it's all processed rubbish and it's bad for you.
Yeah, no.
Eat other things.
I know, but yes, not disagreeing with you, but the fact that you get served up even the worst rubbish until 11 and you can't I just want a burger.
But it's when you go into a restaurant and it's 1 minute past 11 and you want the fried breakfast and they say, oh, sorry, it's
I can't bear that. Yeah, the kitchen's closed.
The answer is not to go to McDonald's, I'm afraid.
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
What I hate more in restaurants is, and this happened to us on Monday morning, you go into an empty restaurant, right?
And they can't accommodate you.
and they say, there's 3 of us, can we have a table for 3?
Well, have you booked?
Me, Isabel and Coit. Have you booked? No. And they go, right, you haven't got a reservation. I'm thinking, see this whole empty room? Just anywhere here will do. What is that all about as well?
Power. Somewhere else.
It does make you feel unwelcome, doesn't it? But I suppose they just want to check whether you're one of the 2 customers they were expecting or not.
Well, we're expecting you right after this break. Please don't go away. More of this.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Nana Queer, weekends from 3 p.m.
J.K. Rowling has accused politicians of snuggling up to trans campaigners. The Harry Potter author has called for an investigation into why political parties are embracing the language of pro-trans groups. So is it time to ditch campaign groups such as those? Well, welcome again to my clashers, former Labour Party advisor Matthew Larter, also businessman and activist Adam Brooks.
I think the Cass report is really welcome. I think there's been a huge amount of agreement, including from some trans rights campaigners, that there's an awful lot of good in the Cass report. I think that I'm more concerned about mermaids, which is currently under a Charity Commission investigation, and some of the reports, if they're to be believed, like sending out chest binders, are more alarming. I think on Stonewall, which has done such great work over the past 30 years on LGBT rights.
It said 2-year-olds could be trans. Now, that is one of the most horrifying things I read today. Actually, J.K. Rowling tweeted that out there. To say that a 2-year-old can think that they can be another gender when my 4-year-old still thinks she's Elsa on some days. You know, there's no common sense, and to me it's
very badly phrased.
It's very sinister that these people actually believe that these kids want to change gender, and unfortunately out there are parents that almost see a trans kid as a fashion accessory now, and I think this whole agenda has pushed on people that this is normal to change gender, and we have to push back. And as I said earlier, to be trans is not normal.
Well, I don't agree with that
extreme.
phrasing. I think it's a big step, Adam, but there are clearly people throughout history who have been
But it's
trans.
not normal behaviour, is it?
I think as far as children are concerned, children need to be given the space to explore the world, and that can include experimenting with, breaking previous gender stereotypes. That doesn't mean that people should be sort of labelled at the age of 2, which I completely disagree with.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me.
My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country. That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Norman Baker and Rennie Hendekamp here talking about stories making the news today. And stats have come out today, Rennie, showing the generation of people scarred by the pandemic. Exam results are going to be behind for a good few years because of COVID.
Yeah, quelle surprise. I mean, this is absolutely shocking that we have to keep listening to this now when we should have examined this before COVID and thought, well, hang on a minute, if we take education away from our children, what is it going to do? So these figures are looking like by 2030, when the children that were 5 during the school shutdown take their GCSEs, less than 40% will get grade 5 and above in maths and English.
I just don't understand why. We've got so much time to catch up. And my eldest, was probably 3 or 4, and I don't think he was already in the preschool.
The difference is that the kids that are going to be most affected here are the most disadvantaged kids, the ones that had rubbish schools, who didn't supply anything online, that haven't used their catch-up money or didn't get their catch-up money. Those kids are going to be the ones. And unfortunately, those kids were always going to be the ones that were disadvantaged anyway. And what we know is that poverty breeds ill health. So this doesn't stop at their education. It's going to stop at what jobs they can get, how much money they can earn, how well they can keep themselves.
How much they have to use the NHS.
Exactly.
And I mean, that's very interesting, just looking at that whole area and the fact that they have one parent or 2 parents who will have to work in very low-paid jobs, probably 12 hours a day, and aren't around to supervise them and say, you will do your homework, you'll do this and do that.
Well, and it was also those parents who were more likely to be key workers, bus drivers, train drivers, going to work. So it was different for our kids, because my Alice was 18 months during the pandemic. She just got more of mummy every day and more of granny. But unfortunately, these disadvantaged kids didn't. But we're seeing more of this. We saw in the week that alcohol deaths are now climbing, and that's a direct response to the pandemic as well, that people sat at home, they drank more because you couldn't go to a pub, but you could still buy it in Tesco's or online. So we're seeing so many long-term effects from COVID policy. It wasn't COVID, it was COVID policy that are going to damage us for decades.
Should never close schools ever again.
I keep reading, granted on the internet and whatever, that it's now beyond doubt that China was responsible for releasing COVID, and, you know, whether it was an accident or deliberate or whatever it is, it emanated from China. And yet, and if that is true, nobody is doing anything about it. Nobody is calling China to book.
People don't call China to book because, or America or Russia very much, because they're too powerful in the world to be held to account. But I mean, I've always thought that it was a very curious coincidence, wasn't it, that the COVID outbreak was in Wuhan, which is exactly the same place as this a laboratory which was experimenting in these substances. And it seems to me unlikely that it was anything other than a leak or deliberate leak from that particular place.
So I'm going to pull back a little bit. I think it definitely came from the lab. It's very evident now. There's good evidence. I don't think it was deliberate because it's too difficult to control. But I think it was a nasty accident. And I do think China have a lot to answer for, because they stopped all their internal flights but carried on letting flights go to Europe from Wuhan. There's a lot here, and it has damaged people forever.
Well, I'm laughing here because we've got a friend of the programme, Cooper Wallace. Let's see Cooper. We're going to talk to Cooper now because Cooper. Let's see Cooper. He doesn't actually. Cooper's not really known by talking. So can we see Cooper, please?
Cooper and his mum, Lauren, joining us from Manchester.
Cooper, the thing is, my friend, I saw you all over the news programmes yesterday, and the thing is, you're not famous for speaking, you're famous for making the sound of a seagull. Make a sound of a seagull for us, will you?
Oh, you've just transported me to a Cornish coastal town. Wow, and you're a winner at this. You've just won a big competition.
Well done, congratulations.
Well done.
Yeah.
This medal around his neck.
Tell us about this competition that you've won then, Cooper.
So it was all in Belgium, and we had to go and do a noise to see if we could win it. And what else was there? I won.
Wow.
But how do you know how to impersonate a seagull, for instance? I mean, Mum, does he watch them? Does he study them? Does he practice this?
He enjoys watching them at the beach, but he was bitten by one while we were at the seaside a few years ago, and he believes he's got the Spider-Man effect.
Well, do you know that happened to Spider-Man, Cooper? He was bitten by a spider, and then he got the powers of a spider. So I think you may have the powers, the hidden secret powers of a seagull.
Do you like to steal ice creams as well?
Not stealing them, but I do like to eat them.
Are you working on flying?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
So what else do you do besides seagulls? Are there other sounds that you do?
I can do a trumpet noise.
Oh, yeah, give us a trumpet.
That's good.
It's very good.
Very
and what
good.
were you up against? It was stiff competition. What other sounds were the other children making?
They weren't children, they were adults.
Oh, and adults.
Yes.
Apologies.
It was all seagulls, and some of them sound like caca.
And have you ever made your seagull noise in front of an actual seagull? And what was its reaction, if you have?
It was just like looking around, and like it knew it was me, but it felt like it was a friend.
Well.
What was your prize? What did you get? You got the medal. Did you get anything else?
I got a massive basket full of stuff.
Wonderful.
Full of chocolate, biscuits, drinks, all sorts, really.
All sorts. Well, you're a hero, mate. Well done. Well done to you, Lauren. Well done to you.
Well
Thanks for
done.
speaking
What a
to us
skill.
today, guys. Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you very much for having us on.
Not at all.
Well done.
Anytime.
Have a great day at school, Cooper. Take care. Anyone else got any hidden talents they wish to declare?
When I was young,
on the
Norman,
panel?
I think the thing that we were all trying to impersonate when I was young, when I was 8, 9, 10, around his age as well, was the bleep phone. Do you remember those bleep phones?
The trim phones.
Trim phones, exactly what it was. I couldn't do it, but, you know, everybody used to go...
Starlings do it very well.
What?
Starlings do it very well. They sit in trees ringing like phones.
Do they?
Yeah. They're real mimics.
Wow.
Are they called Busby?
Yeah.
You're showing your age, Norman. Am I allowed to say that?
Yeah, you are.
I know, he could sue you.
Back in the day, we had Busby.
Yeah. The Princess of Wales has become the first member of the royal family appointed to the Order of Companion of Honour. What is that, Norman?
Well, it's a rarefied group of 65 people who are given that honour because of outstanding achievements in the arts, medicine and science. And much as you might like Kate, you do wonder what on earth she's done to...
Outstanding public service.
Outstanding.
I mean, she has done outstanding public service.
I just find it a little bit odd when the royals can give themselves medals.
Well, and then the picture of young Louis, which has got Isabel all fuzzy today, or whatever, there's this grinning
I'm just
little face
pleased.
everywhere.
They kept us on suspense, but I'm glad the picture was released. Anyway, we say thank you to Renee Hundekamp and to Norman Baker, and we say good morning to Alex Burkle, who has our weather forecast.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Morning, here's your GB News weather from the Met Office. It's a bit chilly out there at the moment, but for many of us it's going to be a dry day with some decent sunny spells. Watch out for a touch of frost in some rural spots, and there are already a few showers in parts of the southwest and towards North Sea coastal parts, and here some of them will continue as we go through the afternoon as well. Otherwise, a decent amount of sunshine, especially across western parts of England and Wales and across much of Scotland and Northern Ireland too. Despite the sunny skies though, it is going to feel a little bit chilly. Temperatures below average for the time of year generally, most places into double figures, but just about for some, particularly towards the northeast. As we go through tonight, and most of the showers will die out, and so it is going to be dry for many of us. There will be a bit more cloud perhaps towards eastern parts and a little bit more blustery here, but elsewhere calmer and clear skies means temperatures will take a bit of a drop. A bit more frost around first thing tomorrow morning, then this morning a chilly start for many of us. Again, as we go through tomorrow, a few showers to watch out for across parts of central England into Wales. There may be a few dotted here. Also towards the northeast, across eastern parts of Scotland, some fairly frequent showers and perhaps a little bit breezier here. But otherwise, again, generally fine and dry for many of us. Perhaps just a bit more cloud around compared to today. Nonetheless, many of us will see some sunny spells. Temperatures still a little bit on the low side. Most places just about getting into double figures.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In Fife, the A917 is closed each way off the A915 at Upper Largo after a car overturned. In County Durham on the A66 is a lane closed eastbound heading into Stockton-on-Tees, where someone's broken down between the Great Burden Roundabout and Surtees Bridge. The A1M in North Yorkshire is closed southbound from junction 48 at Borough Bridge to 47 at Allerton Park after an accident in the early hours of this morning. There are long delays as you divert. On Merseyside, Balliol Road in Bootle remains closed eastbound off the A565 Derby Road after a spillage earlier this week. On the M4 in Swansea, there's a lane closed again today for emergency barrier repairs on the westbound exit at junction 44 at Hamlet, causing queues, and Southern Rail services aren't running between Shepherd's Bush and Watford Junction because of overhead line problems. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
It's the final week to see how you could win our biggest prize yet. With thanks to Variety Cruises, a family company sailing since 1942, you have the chance to win a £10,000 7-night small boat cruise for two. With flights, meals, excursions and drinks included, you'll be able to choose from any one of their 2025 Greek adventures. Plus, you'll also win £10,000 in tax-free cash to make your summer sizzle. And we'll pack you off with these luxury travel gifts. Hurry, as lines close on Friday. For another chance to win a prize worth over £20,000, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB04 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, it's 9 o'clock. It's Wednesday, the 24th of April.
You'll have breakfast with us until 9:30 this morning, and you're very welcome. Eamonn and Isabel here.
Our top story this morning, the biggest boost for defence spending in a generation. The Prime Minister vows billions more by the end of the decade.
We're announcing the biggest strengthening of our national defence for a generation. Over the next 6 years, we'll invest an additional £75 billion in our defence.
Rishi Sunak puts Britain on a war footing, but will it be enough to beat our enemies?
Big questions over whether Rwanda flights will act as a deterrent after 250 migrants attempted to cross the channel yesterday. 5 deaths amongst those.
Sir Geoffrey Donaldson will appear in court today charged with historic sexual offences.
We'll have Dougie Beattie throughout the morning reporting on that. And there you see the last surviving veteran of a World War II Special Forces regiment. Now, he has been brought home to join the Chelsea pensioners and share his story.
Kids should know more about the sacrifice their forefathers made. Not me, I'm no hero, but all the RAF boys have died, and people like that, they don't realise that. They don't know much about it. They don't even know who Hitler was, half of them.
Hello, it's a bit chilly out today, but at least for many of us it is going to be largely dry, and there will be some decent spring sunshine too. I'll have the details in the full forecast.
So it is the biggest defence boost in a decade. The Prime Minister has vowed to increase defence spending to 2.5% of GDP. That's an extra £75 billion by 2030.
OK, we spoke to the Defence Secretary, Grant Shapps, and he revealed that civil service cuts to pay for this new spending will partly come from his own department.
To take the cuts in my own department of the Ministry of Defence, we have about 60,000 people in MOD. Well, we're saying that by 2028 we think we can manage by 50,000. Or we'll be cutting the bureaucracy behind defence. So we don't think that we need to have, particularly in this world of technology, AI and the rest of it, we don't think we need to have a bloated central department in order to run defence. We want people on the front line, not officers.
Well, let's get the thoughts of our political editor, Christopher Hope, this morning. Good morning to you, Christopher. There was an interesting interview with Grant Shapps earlier, talking about those cuts in his own department, which might surprise some of them, and also denying the claims that were being made by his predecessor on the airwaves yesterday that actually a manifesto tax cut might have to be sacrificed in order to pay for this boost to defence.
That's right. This funding is priced up. It was announced first by Boris Johnson in 2022. Mr Sunak's team say it wasn't actually worked out how to spend it then. He said it as an aspiration. This is money going up each year from now. And it's clearly also, Isabel and Eamonn, another election dividing line. We hear from Labour today that they would hope to match it if they can. And there is plans from Labour, if they win power when the election's held, I expect in November this year, they will have a spending review to see if they can afford it. But clearly, currently, the Tories want to go into an election period saying we are promising to take on Britain's enemies, this so-called axis of autocratic states, Russia, China and Iran, as Britain goes onto a war footing. I was struck by the PM's remarks yesterday saying we're not on the brink of war, nor do we seek it. I mean, these are remarks you couldn't imagine being said a few years ago, but I do think, to hear Ben Wallace today, the former Defence Secretary, saying very clearly that the peace dividend we've enjoyed since 1991 is fast ending. I think that's the kind of new reality we're in. We need to find much more money for defence, and which party will go there is the question right now.
OK, and we also have seen more crossings over the Channel yesterday, even after we saw the horrendous deaths of 5, including a 7-year-old child. Goes to show that, witnessing death doesn't work as a deterrent. Do you think that has undermined the Rwanda bill in any way?
Well, the Rwanda bill, which I expect to become law tomorrow when the King signs it off, will start to work, is the hope of the government. They will be sending out letters and informing those who arrived here illegally they could be on the next plane out, but it'll be 10 or 12 weeks before the first flights take off. Individual cases can be lodged by each person who's told they're going to Rwanda by the government. And that's the problem. That's why Robert Jenrick resigned back in December. He felt that these individual challenges will just delay the whole thing and mean no flights take off at all. A huge worry, and that the deaths yesterday are a further reminder of the challenge of those coming across from France. If it was going to be an actual deterrent, what the PM should say is that the next 150 arrive on the first plane out of here on Friday. That's how a deterrent works. works. But the numbers who've been here, some going back 13 months, they're trying to find people who will be easy to deport because of clear-cut cases. That's not going to necessarily do the job of being a deterrent. What the government wants is a drumbeat, a regular rhythm of flights taking off. They want us to stop talking about it on the news. They want to be part of the regular government figures coming out about what's happening in Whitehall. Nothing more than that. But the problem is, many think this won't work. But the PM has hung his entire political authority on it happening.
Sorry, not general election, don't want to scare everybody. Local elections coming up next week. Do you think that's why we're seeing a bit of a policy blitz from the Prime Minister at the moment? And do you think that certainly this defence spending pledge will have appeased some of those who have been disappointed, really, with the cut-through that the Prime Minister has been making in recent weeks?
Yeah, there are two political cogs turning right now in Westminster. You've got the local elections next Thursday, the mayoral elections, of course, in some of our bigger cities also, and the results there could be difficult for the Tory party. We'll wait and see, certainly if the polling is anything. And beyond that, there's also questions about his own authority in the party. For Rishi Sunak, the party is still 20 points, 25 points behind in the polls, hasn't budged at all since he became Prime Minister. Some critics see a moment of weakness for the PM in the week after a difficult local election result, maybe some problematic mayoral results. So the announcement yesterday has done something, I think, to secure and reassure his critics on the backbenches. Although I should note that James Heapy, the former Armed Forces Minister, saying today this won't result in a bigger army. The army was already at near record lows, and this is all really money being spent on hardware and missiles, but not actually people.
Appreciate it. Leave it there. Just want to ask, we've got the Shadow Attorney General coming up.
She's ready to go.
I know she is. But I just want to say it's an interesting thing here that 50% of us, 50% of people polled say they never see a police officer on the beat. And when I think about it, I would say...
Can't remember the last time you did, just patrolling.
When did I actually ever see a police officer in a uniform? I see plenty of parking wardens, but I don't see... When did you actually see a police officer in a uniform?
I moved out of London last year, but I did quite often see them in London, but I don't know if maybe we lived in a dodgy area. They were doing patrols, but it's not as common as it used to be. Bobby's on the beat.
Well, 50% of you say you never see it, and we're going to be talking to the Shadow Attorney General about that very shortly.
Let's bring in Emily Thornberry now. She joins us this morning. Good morning. Welcome to the programme. I wanted to start with you this morning about the sad breaking news from Lord Frankfield's family that the 81-year-old has passed away after what many would describe as a distinguished career of public service. Did you want to extend your tributes as well?
Yes, I did. Thank you. I worked for many years with Frankfield, and he campaigned particularly on child poverty and on pensioner poverty. And I think there may well be many people today whose incomes are much higher than they would have been if it hadn't been for Frankfield.
Emily, today we're going to talk to you about it, and Labour today are setting up, they're announcing funding for 13,000 extra neighbourhood police officers. And we were just talking there about people say, well, we don't see any police officers in the neighbourhood. And you're setting up this national police savings body. And we've been highlighting this in the programme, all the different forces there are in the country and what they pay for their vehicles, what they pay even for their batons, their helmets, all sorts of things. And there's a huge discrepancy. This, to me, seems like what you guys are proposing, if it works, just common sense politics.
Yep, I think you're right, Eamonn. I think that's absolutely right. Why is it that they're all buying their stuff individually? I don't understand. Why can't we buy it nationally? It will mean that they'll be a bigger customer, so they'll be able to get better prices, but also you'll get a bit of consistency. And the Independent Police Federation have looked into this, and they say that, you know, a huge amount of money can be saved. We're being kind of careful about that, and we're saying, well, let's just assume that you're right, but let's spend half of it and see how we get on. And we're spending that money on increasing the number of police officers, community police officers and PCSOs.
Yeah, well, I hope it works. It certainly sounds as though it's a sensible plan, but we had a doctor on earlier who's saying that, you know, they've seen attempts to do this with different hospital trusts, for example, within the NHS, and it's incredibly hard to get them to agree. I mean, she even gave the example, didn't she, of a big London teaching hospital where they had different manufacturers for syringes on different floors of the hospital, which created huge problems with disposing of them. There's just no joined-up thinking in these huge organisations. So will it be possible? I guess that remains to be seen. I also wanted to ask you about this defence spending pledge that we've seen from the government this morning, 2.5% of GDP by 2030. Will you match it to keep Britain safe?
Keir said several weeks ago that we wanted to move towards spending 2.5% on defence, and indeed when we were in power last, that was about the amount of money that we were spending. But we will do it as circumstances allow. We'll be looking with some interest at whether or not the government produces any details in relation to this, because, you know, the Prime Minister yesterday essentially committed to spending another £75 billion on defence by 2030. So they produced this 22-page document, and not a single line of it was on where the money was coming from. Now, hopefully it'll come in the near future, just like we're hoping that they're going to give us the details on the £46 billion that it's going to cost them to get rid of national insurance. They haven't given us any details on that either. Well, I mean, as we get closer to an election, we're going to get more and more of this, you know, and I know that your programme will hold the government to account in the way that you hold us to account, and that if people want to say they want to spend money, they need to tell us where the money is going to come from.
Well,
because in the end, it's the public that needs to spend to pay for it.
Emily, Grant Shapps was on the programme this morning. We held him to account to it because he said part of the funding would come from 10,000 redundancies within his own department, within the Defence Department. So actually, you're robbing Peter to pay Paul, basically, on this.
Well, what they do is they announce these things and then they don't do them. So they have been announcing cutting back on the number of civil servants for the last 2 years. I think perhaps October 22 was the first time they announced it. Then they said it again last year, and they haven't actually been doing it. And of course, a lot of these people are not like, you know, Treasury bean counters. They're people like in the department that I shadow, which are prosecutors, you know, in magistrates' court, or people who are supposed to be making decisions about who can come into the country to claim asylum. You know, these are, you know, many of these jobs are actually of huge value, but they don't make any decisions at all. All they do is make these announcements and then don't follow through. What you need to do is actually measure them by what they do and not just what they say. So, you know, look at the fact that the number of people in the army is smaller than it was at the time of Napoleon. You know, look at the fact that they've wasted £15 billion on procurement in the last few years. I mean, this is the reality of the situation. Well, so I'm not taking any lectures from the Conservatives on defence.
Well, what they say is that you just commission another review. The former Defence Secretary Ben Wallace said it's OK, Keir Starmer's announced a union for troops. That'll scare the enemy. If Labour had been paying attention the last few years, they wouldn't be so clueless.
I think that, I'm sure that Ben Wallace knows that the state of the infrastructure, the homes that we expect our army and their families to live in, are pretty appalling. The boilers don't work, the places are damp. You know, we need to keep up morale. No wonder there's a recruitment crisis under this government when people are treated as badly as they are. I think that if you are prepared to give your life for our country, then the least you can do is live in a warm, dry home with your family. So frankly, if squaddies need to have proper representation, then that's what should happen. But you know, it goes further than this, doesn't it? We need to make sure that we look at what our up-to-date threats are. That's why we want to have a strategic review. You know, there is no point spending money along the lines of, I don't know, the Second World War. We need to look at what the threats are now, and there are greater threats than there have been over the last few years, and we need to make sure that our response to it is up to date so that we don't waste people's money.
Yeah, well, we can agree on that. I just want to ask you one final question. You'll be aware it was St George's Day yesterday, and your boss, Sir Keir Starmer, came out saying that we must not flinch from the St George's flag and we must be patriotic, and I just wanted wanted to find out how you found it, whether that message perhaps was directed at you, given your controversial message back in 2014 with the St George's flag, where you were highly criticised for sneering at it.
Yeah, I mean, I took a photograph of a house with some St George's flags on it. I didn't say anything. Obviously, people looked at it and made their own conclusions for whatever reasons, and I resigned. Yesterday, in fact, it was a bit of a sad day for me. My husband's much-loved uncle had died, and we were at a memorial service. And we talked a lot about the fact that he came from a Jewish background. They were a family that had come over just a couple of generations before, but how proud he was to be British and the contribution that he made, not just from his military service, but also the commissioning of silver work that he was involved in through a charity where he was, and he worked with the V&A in order to enhance the culture of our country.
Emily Thornberry, thanks for your time this morning, and we'll speak again soon. Thank you very much indeed.
Right.
We've had a busy morning. Bev and Andrew, nice to see you back, Bev.
We just give an award to the best swerve of the answer of the day.
I know.
She did sneer, which is why she was sacked from the front.
Well, yes, but, you know,
she's... It was the day of an England football match. She took the photograph. It was a white van man, somewhere in Kent.
Rochdale, I think it was. Yeah. And, do you think Sir Keir Starmer was talking to her, or...?
Which probably might have been. But we're actually going to be talking a bit about that, because we're talking to Maggie Oliver, the great ex-police officer who's won an award. She's won an award for their stuff on the grooming gangs, because the two-tier policing, all the pubs that were closed in central London yesterday because of St George's Day. Why?
And also her opinion on these WhatsApp exchanges from police officers in relation to the Nottingham stabbings, and the mother, obviously, I'm sure you've been talking about this morning, who's come out and said that the police needed to show much more respect to the victims there.
Yeah,
really
awful story. That, yeah. OK, well, we look forward to it. Yeah,
I was just going to ask you, would you be offended? Well, let me ask Eamonn, who's similar age to me. Would you be offended if someone said, back in your day? Because apparently that's now offensive.
Yeah, obviously it goes over my head.
It's not even offensive. You can now successful sue.
So you can sue over it.
But, you know... I look back in my day and I look at the experiences and the enrichment, the empowerment, and I don't necessarily see that as... Back in my day, I think things were often a lot better. Yeah. So I feel quite strong by it, and my experiences garnered from it. But, but, you know, but I do... Isabel said earlier that ageism is a big thing and a growing problem in the country, and I do believe that, and I do believe as I get older, I don't see anything different with me. I'm the same person. But I think people's attitude towards me, particularly in this business, where they look and they say, what would he know? He wouldn't know. He's old, he's different, he's this, he's that.
You know everything, Eamonn.
In fact, you know more because you've been around so long.
Exactly.
You know more because you've been around so long.
I do. I mean, times are moving quickly, there's no doubt about it. But I think most of us at this table are largely keeping up.
Nice tan.
Yeah, lovely tan.
And a lovely holiday.
Oh,
nice
I look forward to hearing about it. But
we're going to watching you swimming in the pool.
Oh, did you like that?
Yeah, I played it over and over and over again.
Stop it.
Well, on that
note,
here's the competition. Have a go. It's our final week.
It's the final week to see how you could win our biggest prize yet. With thanks to Variety Cruises, a family company sailing since 1942, you have the chance to win a £10,000 7-night small boat cruise for two. With flights, meals, excursions and drinks included, you'll be able to choose from any one of their 2025 Greek adventures. Plus, you'll also win £10,000 in tax-free cash to make your summer sizzle. And we'll pack you off with these luxury travel gifts. Hurry, as lines close on Friday. For another chance to win a prize worth over £20,000, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB04 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
A World War II veteran, he is 102. Boy, does he talk sense. Talking to him after this.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
King Charles is well known for his views on climate change, and apparently he's now taking steps to make sure that his Sandringham estate is more eco-friendly. Well, it's been reported that the King is planning to have 2,000 solar panels installed on that estate, and it's set to make the estate largely self-sufficient with a supply of his own green electricity. Well, joining me now is former royal correspondent, the absolute legend, that is Michael Cole. Michael, twice in 2 days I feel blessed. Look, King Charles has long been talking up his eco-credentials. Some may uncharitably compare him to Greta Thunberg in a tweed suit. It's one thing, however, to be self-sufficient in energy, but got to be said, solar panel farms, they're hardly eco-friendly, are they? They destroy environments. What's your take?
I certainly agree with that. The King has indeed, as you say, Martin, and good afternoon to you, applied for planning permission. Now, this is going to be a bit of a mini solar farm, 2,000 solar panels on a site of 2 hectares. And as he has the Sandringham estate, 20,000 acres, 4 acres isn't going to be very much, and it's nowhere near where he lives at Sandringham House. Now, these things, which we're seeing on the screen, are hugely controversial up here. A monster one is being planned on the borders between Suffolk and Cambridge, and the people there really despise it. As they say quite rightly, is this grade A agricultural land being turned over to this semi-industrial use and spoiling the look of the countryside and changing it in a negative way.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Got a great story in which to end the programme today. The last surviving member of a Special Forces regiment during the Second World War fulfilled his dream to dine at the Ritz Hotel in London to celebrate his 102nd birthday.
Yeah, Cameron Walker takes up the story.
War is not glamorous. We thought it was, actually, when you're young.
John Morris is the last surviving member of his SAS regiment from the Second World War. Before joining the Special Forces, his service began in Kent, shooting down German bombers targeting London.
The only thing I shot down actually was a chimney, kitchen chimney, accidentally by mistake. Nobody had any breakfast that morning. I wasn't very popular.
John was one of the last people to receive a 100th birthday card from Queen Elizabeth II.
All birthday cards from the children from Christchurch School.
Celebrating his 102nd birthday this week, local school children made him cards, thanking him for his bravery.
I think kids should know more about the sacrifice their forefathers made. Not me, I'm no hero, but all the RAF boys had died, and people like that, they don't realise that. They don't know much about it. They don't even know who Hitler was, half of them.
John, who's now a Chelsea pensioner, kindly agreed to share his wartime memories. In 1943, he was sent to North Africa with the Royal Artillery and passed Special Forces selection, taking part in the Allied invasion of Italy.
75,000 British and colonial troops were killed in Italy. The Germans fought back very well.
Ultimately, the Allies were successful, but a much more powerful, natural threat was not far away. Mount Vesuvius, famous for destroying the Roman town of Pompeii in AD 79, erupted.
I woke up in the morning, heard this rumble, looked outside, this wall of lava coming down. So never go on a volcanic island where I am, because it's very dangerous.
That year, Allied forces landed on the beaches of Normandy. Known as D-Day, the operation led to the liberation of Western Europe and was one of the most famous and widely praised successes of the war. Far away in Italy, John and his comrades were branded with a less than flattering nickname, turned into a popular wartime song.
We've already done 3 D-Days. We did the North African landing, we did the Battle of Britain, and we did the Italian landing, we did the Yugoslavia, Albania, and they called us D-Day Dodgers.
John celebrated his 102nd in style. First a party with the Chelsea pensioners, followed by a champagne lunch organised by friend and Irish Guards ambassador Frederike Crum.
The Ritz always had a wonderful relationship with the Chelsea pensioners. We celebrate in style, and he's never been to the Ritz, so that will be worthy of the 102nd birthday. Right, John?
That's right.
Cameron Walker, GB News.
What a story, what a man. Happy 102nd birthday, John Morris.
Yeah.
Very well done.
Fabulous.
Absolutely brilliant.
That's it for us. Have a lovely day. Up next, it's Britain's newsroom, but first, here's your forecast.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Morning, here's your GB News weather from the Met Office. It's a bit chilly out there at the moment, but for many of us it's going to be a dry day with some decent sunny spells. Watch out for a touch of frost in some rural spots, and there are already a few showers in parts of the southwest and towards North Sea coastal parts, and here some of them will continue as we go through the afternoon as well. Otherwise, a decent amount of sunshine, especially across western parts of England and Wales and across much of Scotland and Northern Ireland too. Despite the sunny skies though, it is going to feel a little bit chilly. Temperatures below average for the time of year generally, most places into double figures, but just about for some, particularly towards the northeast. As we go through tonight, and most of the showers will die out, and so it is going to be dry for many of us. There will be a bit more cloud perhaps towards eastern parts and a little bit more blustery here, but elsewhere calmer and clear skies means temperatures will take a bit of a drop. A bit more frost around first thing tomorrow morning, then this morning a chilly start for many of us. Again, as we go through tomorrow, a few showers to watch out for across parts of central England into Wales. There may be a few dotted here. Also towards the northeast, across eastern parts of Scotland, some fairly frequent showers and perhaps a little bit breezier here, but otherwise, again, generally fine and dry for many of us. Perhaps just a bit more cloud around compared to today. Nonetheless, many of us will see some sunny spells. Temperatures still a little bit on the low side, most places just about getting into double figures.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In Fife, the A917 remains closed off the A915 at Upper Largo after a car overturned. The A1M in North Yorkshire is closed southbound from junction 48 at Borough Bridge to 47 at Allerton Park after an accident. There are long delays towards the closure. And as you divert, now on the M62 in Cheshire, there's a lane closed eastbound where someone's broken down between junctions 11 and 12 from Birchwood to the M60 Eccles interchange. It's sloped towards there. In Lincolnshire, the A15 is blocked northbound by an accident between the A153 and the A17 near Sleaford, causing delays. There are delays of up to an hour, some cancelled trains at Birmingham New Street thanks to a trespasser earlier. And on the M4 in Swansea, there's a lane closed for emergency barrier repairs on the westbound exit at junction 44 at Samlet, causing queues. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg's State of the Nation, Monday to Thursday from 8 p.m.
The International Monetary Fund has estimated that Russia will outgrow all advanced economies in 2024. This is in spite of all the sanctions the West has imposed on Russia, in spite of its removal of the SWIFT banking system, in spite of the fact that Germany has almost entirely weaned itself off Russian gas, and in spite of the 50,000 soldiers who have died and the endless resources it has poured into the Ukraine war. So, what are we missing here? Why is Russia going to grow more than the rest of us? Well, it's simple. Russia is willing to make use of its own energy resources to provide abundant supply to its citizens. Increased supply means lower prices, and cheap energy is inextricably linked to economic growth. But since 2008, the United States has grown at twice the rate of the United Kingdom. The big difference is that America has much lower energy prices, while the UK insists on masochistic green policies.